For the folks that are online, we're having some technical difficulties. The meeting will get started soon.
Hi, everyone. We're having a few technical difficulties, so as soon as we get them fixed, we will be starting the meeting.
Mayor, I think we are up and running now. We can go ahead and get started when you are ready. We are up and running.
All right, we are going to get started. Today is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. Welcome, everyone, to the City Council regular meeting. Thank you, that's better. I am going to call this meeting to order. Notice is hereby given to the members of the City Council and to the general public that at this regular meeting, the City Council may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for discussion and consultation with the city's attorneys for legal advice on any item listed on the following agenda. Can we have roll call?
Mayor Daggett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Aslan.
Here.
Councilmember Harris. Councilmember House.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here. And council, sorry about this. I know I usually tell you ahead of time. Vice Mayor, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
My pleasure. Please stand as you're able.
Councilmember Matthews, our mission statement.
Thank you, Mayor. Where is it? The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
Thank you. Councilmember House, our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my honor. The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. We're moving down to item number 4, which is public participation. Public participation is taken at the beginning of the meeting and again at the end. And it enables the public to address the council about an item that is not on the agenda. Comments related to items that are on the agenda will be taken at the time that the item is discussed. If you wish to address the council at tonight's meeting, please complete a comment card and submit it to the recording clerk. Your name will be called when it is your turn to speak. You may address council up to 3 times throughout the meeting, including comments made during public participation. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes per item to allow everyone an opportunity to speak. At the discretion of the chair, 10 or more persons present at the meeting and wishing to speak may appoint a representative who may have no more than 15 minutes to speak. And another important point is that council cannot respond back to you during public participation. So, and one other thing I'd like to say is, and I say this at most of our meetings, that I want everyone to feel comfortable speaking to council regardless of what your view or position is, regardless of what it is that you want to say. And so I ask for no outward signs of agreement or disagreement when someone speaks. Let's give everyone the respect that they deserve when they're up at the podium speaking. So I'm going to start with J.S. Kelly. Is this Shanine?
It is. It's still Shanine, though.
Shanine.
Yeah, my law starts me. He's the city attorney, so he gets my purse. I have $5 in it. As always, it's lovely to see you. I have a difficult subject. It's about the Flagstaff Police Department and sexual assault. Golda Meir, when she was Prime Minister of Israel, she convened her all-male cabinet to address the epidemic of rapes in Tel Aviv and charged them with finding a solution. And their solution was that all the women should be under curfew. And Golda Meir responded by saying, "But isn't it the men who are doing the raping?" And I offer this as an illustration of the difference between the way men and women respond to sexual assault. Now we're going to do a thought experiment. I want all the men in here, when I say close, to close your eyes for 3 seconds. I will count to 3, and when I say open, open them. All right, Aslan, everybody, all guys, close. 1, 2, 3. Now open them. You are a woman, according to the Democratic platform anyway, and you have lost 1/3 of your upper body strength, 2/3 of your lower body strength. You will now do most of the housework and child rearing in your home, and you're going to pay 4 times what you used to pay for a haircut. I'm not trying to be glib, but I'm trying to say that there's a significant difference between the way the testosterone brain and the estrogen brain responds to a crisis. 4 weeks ago at Home Depot, I was purchasing daffodils for my mother's memorial garden. And a man who is 5'10", sandy-colored hair, very muscular, very white skin, rode up on his bicycle, pulled down his pants, and began masturbating in front of me. Temporarily, I froze. I ran to the service desk. I charged them to call senior management and the police. They laughed. They thought it was hilarious. Senior management appeared. We called the police. I was very shaken. I waited over an hour, and the police were unable to come. But the garden manager, Quartz, a former police officer, he said he would make the report. I called the next day, and there was no police name given, a report number. It seems that somehow this fell through the cracks. I would like to listen to the, as a former speech and debate teacher, the dispatch and find out what happened. Our police are splendid. They're knights in shining armor. I would like every police officer to receive a $1,000 bonus. They deal with the underbelly every day. This so shook me up that night I bit my tooth down so far that I split the root, and I ended up having 7 hours of dental surgery. I want to feel safe. I think this individual is local. If you did a police sketch and took it to the local gyms, he could be found. I would like the police to act on this and the photograph of this person's sketch be in the Arizona Daily Sun. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Sharon Bodine.
Am I allowed to start? Okay. The IRS states America loses $1 trillion annually due to tax evasion. $20 billion lost to corporate straw men tax haven abuse in Arizona. S1533 Stop Tax Haven Abuse Act, Senate passed in 2019. 10 of these Fortune 500s here in Arizona. As a small business owner operating while disabled in chronic pain, I've paid my employees $15 hourly to watch my service dog. What is the excuse of executives who have enough money from tax evasion, they collapse our cities, states, and entire countries' economies? Treason, Article 3, Section 3, U.S. Constitution. Betrayal of our trust, confidence, breach of faith, treachery. Executives who fail to pay their fair share create premeditative mens rea, criminogenic environments, turning innocent people into quote-unquote criminals for conflict of interest stocks. Human trafficking, sex slavery, private prisons operating on the stock exchange. Treason, criminal offense of acting to overthrow one's government or assisting others to do so. Americans, whether foreign or domestic, do not function at their peak potential for America in a forced criminal environment. Arizona State Constitution, Article 2, Section 15, and the U.S. Constitution, 8th Amendment, excessive bail not required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. Section 9, no law granting irrevocably any privilege or immunity shall be enacted. Section 13, equal privileges and immunity belong to all citizens or corporations. Had us, we commoners, been taught in school of tax havens, we wouldn't be disabled and displaced, enduring harassment and victimization. Crimes against humanity, U.S. Law 18 U.S.C. 2332A, Section 921. Crimes Against Humanity Act 2009. Genocide Accountability Act. NSA Executive Order 12333, Terrorism Prevention. 14th Amendment, U.S. Constitution. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of U.S. citizens, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process. But by the time our life, our liberty, our health, our homes, our children, our animals, and our property extorted from us,
The damage from the abuse is done because the system put the cart before the horse. 50 million of us are disabled, a statistic for medical malpractice and negligence. The medical industry spends $50 billion in tax evasion money annually procuring accomplice attorneys to protect unlawful behaviors while financially crippling our public sector. Our civilians, cops, FBI, DEA, state and federal employees, all paid socialist wages at poverty threshold. We, the people, are not the criminals. Please, I implore you, counsel, do no more harm to us. And please have the courage to protect people in the Constitution. And please stand up to the corporate welfare recipients destroying our nation.
Thank you. Jill Stevenson.
Hello, Council, and Mayor and Vice Mayor. We are in the midst of a human-caused climate crisis. We all need to do whatever we can to mitigate the disastrous effects of this rapidly changing climate. Making walking and biking safer, electrifying fleet vehicles, divesting from fossil fuels, and not purchasing goods from companies that support oil drilling, gas fracking, or coal mining. These steps should be tackled by our city and county government. As individuals, we can also make a huge difference. Eat less beef and more plant-based foods, reduced food waste, check those leftovers in the back of the refrigerator before they go bad. Question expiration dates, don't just automatically throw food out, and support community composting. Take fewer car trips, use public transportation, bike, walk, or carpool. Don't buy what you don't need. Buy secondhand. Donate what you don't use. Conserve water. Reduce plastic use. Recycle and reuse. Vote for climate-aware candidates. Contact members of Congress and local officials with your concerns. Support climate-helpful organizations. Encourage friends and family to join the effort. It will take all of this and all of us to make a better world for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Danae Pressler.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. My name is Danae Pressler. I'm the Climate Analyst for the Flagstaff Sustainability Office. I'm pleased to share a quick update on the Northern Arizona Solar Co-op, which launched in October. This is the third time that the city has partnered with the nonprofit Solar United Neighbors, Coconino County, and the city of Sedona to increase solar access across northern Arizona. This project offers residents and small businesses free solar education and the ability to work together to receive discounted pricing on solar installations. I know that some of you are very familiar with this program and have gone through it to go solar at your own home in the previous rounds of the Solar Co-op, and thank you for doing that. Over the past 2 rounds of the Northern Arizona Solar Co-op, 117 residents in Flagstaff installed solar, which generates 878 kilowatts of clean energy here in our community and provides those households with a combined energy savings of more than $4.5 million over the life of the solar systems. We're hosting a free Solar 101 workshop next week on Tuesday, November 14th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Participants can attend in person at Mother Road Brewing at 7 South Mike's Pike or join the live webinar online. The event will talk through the technology, economics, financing, and more of going solar at your home or business, as well as share how a solar co-op works. Our goal is to have 150 members to participate in this round, and we're currently at 22 with 2 more months to go. We'd love your help in spreading the word to your neighbors, friends, and constituents. Those interested can visit www.solarunitedneighbors.org/northernaz. to learn more into RSVP. And again, that's solarunitedneighbors.org/northernaz. The deadline to sign up for the solar co-op is January 12th, 2024. And I look forward to sharing the impacts of this solar co-op at a future date. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Malene Combs.
Good afternoon. I was hoping to speak for a group today. I don't know how many are here to stand with me. You guys stand up for me, please. Thank you. So that does mean I get a little extra time, right?
They have to sign up with you on the card.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Malene. I'm accompanied by my service dog, Cinnamon. In case anyone doubts it, she's a dog and a very good girl. I am a human. I brought a few friends, and I would like you to take a look at their faces. They could be your family, your parents, your children. I'm sure they are that to someone. I'm 51 years old and seriously mentally ill. I live, vote, and pay my taxes here in Flagstaff. My last job was as a peer and behavioral health tech for Teros. My mom first molested me in 1982. I was 10 years old. This is what forms the basis of my complex PTSD. I live in my van because being inside is unbearable with my PTSD. Cannot do it. If I had not migrated outside, I would be dead right now. Instead, the last 10 years, I have not been hospitalized for mental illness. There are many of us. We are very diverse. Some of us live in our vans or cars. Some of us live on the streets. Some travel, some stay put. Many of us meet out in the forest and help each other. We share a whole lot of good things together. And when it gets really rough, we support one another. We know that law enforcement protects you and your financial assets. We are expendable. We are the human beings you so efficiently cleared out of Lucky Lane and Huntington Drive. But we are human. I was told it was my choice to be mentally ill and live in my van. It is not. And I'm angry, very angry. The anti-camping ordinance has made my life a constant struggle. I am demeaned and humiliated by your cops, and they're following your orders. We all know it. The anti-camping ordinance punishes those without shelter and forces them into more and more desperate situations. And every single winter, we have deaths from exposure to this weather. Their deaths are on your hands because you have an anti-camping ordinance. I'm not here to beg for sympathy. I come with a demand. We need a coalition.
One moment. Sterling, since there are the required number of people in the audience, but they're not signed up on the card, can I allow her extra time?
If there were 10 in support, they would need to sign the card before they leave.
Okay.
Can you guys sign for me before you leave?
And if you could have them all stand again to make sure that that's correct.
Could you stand again? Thank you. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
The city shelter is always full.
Thank you, guys.
Is there
I love you guys. Thank you.
Yes. Sean or someone, can you come get this card and have them sign up?
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm not even going to be so radical.
Hold on just a sec. So we're going to give you an extra 10 minutes, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not here to beg for your sympathy, and I'm not even going to be so terribly radical as to suggest that you repeal the anti-camping ordinance. That has died so many times over, although that is ultimately my goal. But I want a coalition of unhoused people, at least 3 of us, 1 Native person at least, and 1 person representing those without vehicles. And I want you to sit down and talk with us, Flagstaff Police, Catholic Charities, and the shelter services, all of us together. It is time you start treating us as human beings. And for the love of humanity, do not allow your officers to treat us the way they did out on Lucky Lane. I have never seen anything so ignorant and so cruel as what I saw out there. And it was across the board. Oh, they followed the law. Don't get me wrong. I can't file a complaint. They did what you told them to do. Mayor and council members out in those streets, you're bullies. And you use Flagstaff PD to bully on your behalf. We exist. We do not need to be incarcerated, our vehicles, our homes impounded. And that is what was promised to me out on Lucky Lane. Now, right now, I cannot afford gas. I'm going for Social Security. I'm waiting. I have $290 a month in food stamps. That is it. You guys try to live on that. My van is parked. I finally got a hold of a bus pass from Catholic Charities. Yesterday, I walked down here 4 miles round trip. I hope my words today made you really uncomfortable. And I hope tonight when you go to bed, you see my anger and you see my hurt. And for God's sake, see my humanity and the humanity of my friends back there. Cinnamon is a dog. We are humans. What are you? Anybody that wants my email address, I'll leave it back there.
Thank you. Okay, so one part of allowing extra time for a speaker is that anyone who is signed up with that speaker cannot make a separate statement.
That's correct.
So, Machias, I know that you signed that, and I don't know who Camille is. So I'm not going to be able to allow you to speak separately because you were part of that group. Okay. No additional public comment?
No, Mayor, I don't have any.
Okay. And as a reminder, there is public participation at the end of the meeting as well. All right, moving down to item number 5. Proclamations and recognition. We have a proclamation for Native American Heritage Month, and I believe that Rose is here, and I don't know if anyone from the commission is here. But please, everyone, meet me down in front here. Yes, please. Is he still here? I'm right here. Oh, yeah. Oh. The City of Flagstaff celebrates the rich cultural traditions and proud ancestry of Native Americans, Indigenous peoples, and recognizes the vital contributions Native peoples have made to strengthen and diversify our community. The Mayor and City Council of Flagstaff have a history of supporting the advancement of diversity. Approximately 11.7% of the citizens in the City of Flagstaff are members of Native American nations, including Havasupai, Wallapai, Hopi, Navajo, and Paiute tribes, as well as other tribal members who cherish the region. Native Americans, indigenous peoples in Flagstaff, along with our non-human relatives, have played and continue to play an integral role in shaping, developing, and creating a vibrant city. The Flagstaff City Council established the Commission on Diversity Awareness to advise the City Council on issues and methods in promoting diversity awareness within the City of Flagstaff. The Commission on Diversity Awareness supports the designation of the month of November 2023 as Native American Heritage Month in unison with state and national observances. Now therefore, I, Becky Daggett, Mayor of the City of Flagstaff, do hereby proclaim November 2023 as Native American Heritage Month and encourage the community to learn about the history, heritage, and contributions of Native American peoples of this great land. Rose, please.
Yat e she hai Rose tohin she khachini no ta anshli no kelachini bashichin azo da should no she da should. Those are my 4 clans, my mom, my dad, my paternal and maternal grandfathers. And I invited grandson to stand up here with me to honor our ancestors that have persevered and that have resilience. And that's why we're still here, and we're happy that we can celebrate our heritage in this city, sitting at the base of our sacred mountain. And there's a lot of different events going on throughout the month, including at NAU with the county, as well as some of the high schools. So I'm also going to be doing a presentation on Thursday next week on some of the things that the Indigenous Commission has been working on. And then one of the highlights for this month is that on Monday we'll be joining the Hopi chairman and vice chairman out at Hopi Homelands. So that's one of the things that we'll be doing. Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the events. Thank you.
Okay, moving down to council liaison reports. I am going to start down here with Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, the Housing Commission met at the end of last month and spoke about some great topics, including part of our agenda today, the proposed bond program, and the expenditure of some homelessness services funding. The Commission on Diversity Awareness also met last month and did updates on all of the topics that we are continuing to consider, including future proclamations, work that was done on the proposed flags for Black History Month and Native American Heritage Month, and additional works on different topics like that. So very productive and great to be able to report on that today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sweet.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. The Metro Plan Board met this last week, and we worked on a refinement of our values and purpose statements, and did a lot of other routine items. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthews.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Mayor, it's been a busy and productive couple of weeks, but no liaison reports for you tonight.
Thank you. My only report is that tomorrow we have an all-day Econa strategic retreat in Sedona. So, down to appointments. There is one appointment to make, and it's to the library board for a term expiring November 2026, and it is my appointment to make, and I am going to, I move that we appoint Katie Quick to a term expiring November 2026. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? Thank you. Okay, moving down to 8 liquor license public hearings. Come on up and talk to us about liquor licenses.
Mayor, if you could open the public hearing to begin. Thank you.
Dang it. All right, I am opening the public hearing, and we are going to discuss liquor licenses.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. I'm Lieutenant Sapp. I'm with the Flagstaff Police Department. I have a new application for a Series 6. It's a bar liquor license application for the Corner Tavern located at 102 East Route 66. It was filed by Mr. and Mrs. Bouchard. And in my investigation, there were no derogatory records found, and there are no current or historical liquor violations on that business. And a representative here is here to answer any questions you might have specific to him.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions of the lieutenant or of the applicant?
Mayor, I just want to thank Craig for appearing in person. We don't always have questions for our applicants, but sometimes we do, and it's important that you're here, and I'm glad to see you.
Okay, we have no public comment, so I'm going to close the public hearing. And Councilmember McCarthy has indicated that he would like to make the motion. So, Councilmember McCarthy?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I move that we forward the application to the state with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. There you go. Thank you. All right. Moving down to item number... moving down to the consent agenda. We have consent agenda items A, B, D, E, F, and all matters under the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine unless a member of City Council expresses a desire at the meeting to remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion. The consent agenda will be enacted by one motion approving the recommendations listed on the agenda. Unless otherwise indicated, expenditures approved by council are budgeted items. Council, are there any items that you would like to pull out? Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull item D. That's the revised priority budget or priority-based budgeting objectives.
All right. We will discuss that separately. But first, I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda item, the consent agenda with the exception of item number D. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So we will take item D separately. And Councilmember House, do you have anything that you would like to start the conversation with?
The only reason I asked for this to be pulled and discussed separately was because of how important it is to our community. I think I'd like to have a little bit more transparent or public conversation about the changes that were made. And just an overview of the process that was gone through for developing these updated objectives.
Thank you. Does staff have the changes that we have attached electronically to our agenda? Does staff happen to have this that they could put up on the screen?
Mayor, I can pull that up on the screen just a moment here.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe that we have Rick Tatter and Chris Rohde on online that should be able to speak to that.
Okay, thank you. So I will let Chris speak to this as to the process that has led us here and the public input that has gone into this, and then also council's part at our retreat. Oh, he's here in person. You must have run downstairs.
And I apologize, Chris. I didn't think to give you some advance notice, so I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Nice play, Chris.
No,
my apologies. Thank you.
If I may, it was impressive speed, Chris, by the way. But as you're going through it, I'll scroll down for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did hear it in my office and come downstairs. So was it possible to just get a recap of the last maybe 20 seconds of things that were said so I know what the exact question that was asked was?
I said that you had a 30-minute presentation to give to us on this. Was that incorrect?
Something along those lines.
Okay. No, I just stated that you could speak to the public process that has gone into any changes, as well as the retreat that the council had where we made a few small changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Mayor, member of councils, and for those in the public here and online. We began this process in the early summer. It started at a retreat in late June with the council, where members of council gave us some of their initial thoughts on areas that they wanted to see changed in each of the 7 priorities and objectives. And we also were given instructions not to change the 7 priorities themselves, but to focus on the 5 or 6 objectives within each of those. So we had, from council, we had our instructions of what they were looking for from the community and where they wanted to start. So we took those initial changes that members of council asked for and put them on boards just like these look right here, with red strike-throughs and blue underlines to show where our initial changes were going to be from your initial feedback. We held 2 of our own open houses, one at the Aquaplex and one at the Murdoch Center, and we tagged along with one that was already planned for the regional plan update. Just kind of hung out in the back over there and kind of tried to poach some of their the folks that showed up for that to give their feedback on these objectives as well. We also attended numerous events throughout the community. We were at the Concerts in the Park series. We were at 3 of those events. We were, off the top of my head, I don't have them all in front of me. We were about 7 or 8 total events, I believe, outside of businesses. At the mall, we were at the J. Lively Activity Center, and we solicited input from folks by having them take sticky notes and tell us what was important to them or what changes they wanted to see. So they could either just say, I want more of X, or I want this specific change in this objective. And then we also had a bilingual survey available for the duration of that period. I think it was about 7 weeks that it ran. We publicized it and solicited feedback on that as well. We at the end, we ended with hundreds of comments, and I think we had about 75 different full submissions through our online survey, which was really nice because then we got a lot of, those tended to be very, what's the right adjective I'm looking for here? Those individuals gave comments on every objective, or many objectives at least, where the people that showed up and used a sticky note usually just gave us their 1 or 2 priorities. So we took all that information and tried to incorporate as many of the changes that were good and workable as we could, and to each of the 7 priorities and objectives here, we made changes. Some of them were just some language changes that people thought better reflected the culture and the needs of our community. Some of them were substantive. So if you'd like, I can go through each of these again. And then finally, a few weeks ago, we came back to council with our recommendations, and council gave a few more tweaks they asked for, and based on the feedback we heard from council as the final point, we made those final changes, and they were here today. That's why initially we had it in the consent agenda. We weren't trying to hide that from anybody, just we had that conversation, and we didn't expect a lot of further changes to them today. One thing I wanted to note as well, in addition to these changes, we added a definition section because many members of our community had questions about what specific terms meant, or just even broad topics. So we had an opportunity to define some of those things, and we took that opportunity. If you'd like, I can talk to some of the bigger things in this in these changes, or I can answer specific questions, or whatever you'd like. Thank you.
Council, do you have a preference?
I'll just say for myself, I don't think it's necessary to go through, and I appreciate, Chris, you, again, running down and letting me put you on the spot on that. And just to clarify, I really wanted to pull this forward, not because I thought that you or the team was trying to hide anything in putting it in the consent agenda, but because of how important it is to our community and the voice of the community that went into this process. I thought it was really important for the community that was with us today to be able to hear that process and know that this was a public process that we went through to make these changes. It wasn't just something that we discussed amongst ourselves or decided that this needed to change for the community. The community's voice was part of that, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and we did hear from staff as well a few different times, including the leadership team, but our changes really came from suggestions the public gave us on this. There were a lot of areas where even sometimes it was only 1 or 2 people made a comment that really resonated with us and said, that makes a lot of sense. We have a clear path to make things better because of what we heard. So a huge thank you to the public for participating in this process.
And thank you, Council Member House, for pulling this out. I agree. It's good to have the public have an additional opportunity to hear how these were developed. So any additional questions or comments? I think that is it for you. You're welcome to stay here with us, or you can go back up to your office, whichever you prefer.
Thanks, Chris.
So can I get a motion to, let me get back to this agenda item. Can I get a motion to approve consent agenda item D?
Mayor, I'll move to adopt the revised PBB objectives.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Second.
Too late, Councilmember McCarthy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you. All right, moving down, item number 10 is routine items. And the first is consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2023-23, an ordinance of the Flagstaff City Council authorizing the acquisition of real property interests for a fiber network as a betterment to the Rio de Flag flood control project, providing for delegation of authority, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date. Mr. Doty.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. No new information on the second read, but happy to address any questions if any have arisen.
Council, are there any questions or comments? If there are none, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll move to read ordinance number 2023-23 by title only for the final time.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? City Clerk?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff authorizing the acquisition of real property interests for a fiber network as a betterment to the Rio de Flag flood control project, providing for delegation of authority, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving down. 10B, consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2023-24, an ordinance amending hours of use for city parks and the hours for lighting of sport courts within city parks.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Amy Hagan, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director, here to answer any questions. If not, we'll be ready for the second read.
Council, do you have any questions or comments? All right.
Mayor, this is Jim McCarthy. Jim McCarthy. May I comment?
Yes, please.
I'm going to support this, although I don't really think it's adequate, considering the noise that's generated by some of our parks. But this is better than the existing, so I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to read the ordinance for the final time?
Mayor, I'll move to read ordinance number 2023-24 by title only for the final time.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, City Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending City Code Title 8, Public Ways and Property, Chapter 11, Policies Regarding Use of Municipal Parks, Section 8-11-001-0005, Use by the General Public / Hours of Use, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you, and thank you, Amy and staff. Can I get a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Ordinance adopted. Moving down to our regular agenda. 11A, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2023-55, a resolution of Flagstaff City Council authorizing condemnation of real property for the Lone Tree Overpass project. Hello again, Mr. Doty.
Hi, good afternoon. Bryce Doty, Real Estate Manager. Here with you again. This resolution authorizes condemnation related to the Lone Tree Overpass project. This is a tiny, very tiny take. I wanted to show this to you on the map here. And we're talking 27 square feet on the corner here of Gable and Lone Tree. The property owner is amenable to the sale. However, there are back taxes on the property, so in order to obtain clear title to it, we are going through the condemnation process to acquire the property. And that's really the issue at stake here. Happy to address any questions related to that, but this will allow us to file the necessary proceedings.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions or comments? All right, can I get a motion to read the ordinance by title for the first time? Councilmember Sweet?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to read resolution number 2023-55 by title only.
Ordinance, could you repeat that? And it's ordinance number 2023? Isn't it? Sorry, this is a resolution. My mistake. You said it correctly the first time. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, City Clerk.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council authorizing condemnation of real property for the Lone Tree Overpass project, providing for delegation of authority and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt?
I move to adopt resolution number 2023-55.
You could have really emphasized that word and thrown it over at me. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, moving down to 11B, which is an ordinance. Consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2025-25, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff ratifying the grant and reservation of easements and formally accepting dedications and donations of easements and real property interests. Hello.
Hi, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Carmen Pryor. I'm the Real Estate Specialist in Community Development. And today I have before you ordinance number 2023-25 for your consideration and adoption. The ordinance of the City Council, the grant and reservation of easements and formally accepting dedications and donations of easements and real property interests. Thank you. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you. And I'll just make a note that there is a long list of these attached electronically to the agenda, all of the easements that we're talking about in right-of-ways.
And I can speak on why the list is very long this year. It approves some of the acquisitions or dispositions of real property that have been previously authorized by you or by other council for capital projects, property exchanges, development agreements, and other purposes. These transactions are included in the ordinance as some of the legal descriptions have slightly changed between the original authorization and final design for the capital project.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to move to read ordinance number 2023-25 by title only for the first time.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, City Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff ratifying the grant and reservation of easements and formally accepting dedications and donations of easements and real property interests, providing for severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So at the November 21st meeting, we'll be reading the ordinance again and adopting it. Item number 11C, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2023-52, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Summit Fire Medical District, the Highlands Fire District, the Pinewood Fire District, the Ponderosa Fire District, and the City of Flagstaff.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. Jerry Bills, Deputy Fire Chief. I am here to answer any questions on this. A little bit of the executive summary was back in August. You approved the Assistance to Firefighters grant for $676,000 for us to provide fire training to our regional partners, who are those districts you just read. The money is 90% federal and 10% district. It's divided up by how many of each member of each agency will attend, and then they pay their little piece. That's all I have for you. If there's anything more, there's a exhibit in the back of the IGA that kind of explains the breakdown. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion to read the ordinance.
Mayor, I move to read resolution number 2023-52 by title only.
I said ordinance, didn't I? That serves me right.
Sounded like resolution to me.
Aw, you're good. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, City Clerk.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Highlands Fire District, Ponderosa Fire Department, Pinewood Fire Department, Summit Fire and Medical District, and the City of Flagstaff for the Assistance to Firefighters Regional Training Grant Program.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
I move to adopt resolution number 2023-52.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Okay, moving down to D, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2023-53, a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Flagstaff and the State of Arizona, acting by and through the Department of Transportation for US 180 at Schultz Creek Drainage Maintenance.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Stacy Brecklin-Eggs, Grants, Contracts, and Emergency Management Director. I'm also here with our Stormwater Director, Ed Schenk, to answer any questions. You went ahead and had a lot on that first one about the IGA that is with the City of Flagstaff and Arizona Department of Transportation for US 180 Schultz Creek Drainage Maintenance. This project, the city will be responsible for the design, advertise, award, and construction of the new drainage system at US 180 and Schultz Creek to alleviate post-fire flooding caused by the 2022 pipeline fire. I think what's important on this to know about the IGA is that the state will review the city's project design plans, provide an inspector for the portion of the city's project within the ADOT right-of-way at no additional cost to the city. In addition, the city, the advertising, the design, the permitting, the construction is all being secured and funded through the FY24 state appropriation that we received from the state. That was approximately $8.9 million that we received from them. And we have already started to receive some of that funding and are monitoring how we're spending that money. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ed if you have any detailed questions about the project.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions about the project or about the funding? Perhaps we've talked about this a few times previously. All right, if there are no questions, no public comment. So I will entertain a motion to read the resolution.
I move to read resolution number 2023-53 by title only.
Can I get a second?
I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, City Clerk.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council approving an intergovernmental agreement between the State of Arizona, acting by and through the Department of Transportation, ADOT, and the City of Flagstaff for US 180 at Schultz Creek Drainage Maintenance.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt?
I move to adopt resolution number 2023-53.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it is adopted. Thank you very much. Moving down to item number E, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2023-51, a resolution adopting the rental incentive bond program, providing framework for the expenditure of $5 million in general obligation bond funds for incentivizing the creation of affordable rental units.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jennifer Michelson, Housing Planning Manager. I don't have a full presentation for you today, but I'm here to assist with any further questions you may have.
Thank you. And just so the public is aware, we discussed this item at 2 weeks ago.
October 24th work session, yes.
Thank you. So, Councilmember McCarthy, did you want to request an amendment?
Well, actually, I'll just make a motion. I move that we read Resolution 2023-51 by title only, but with one minor change. The intent of the minor change is to tailor the program to be consistent with the information packet that the voters were given to inform them of what the program would be. The change proposed here is an addition to the rental incentive bond program submittal requirements, minimum threshold criteria. Specifically, this motion is to add the criterion that, quote, the project includes a minimum of 10% market rate rental units. That's the end of the motion, but I'll just note that already in what we're passing is a 10% minimum affordable component. That's already in the resolution. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Do I have a second on the motion?
I will second.
Any discussion? I would expect there would be.
Yeah, I do. I actually have a question for you, Councilmember McCarthy. And maybe this is a bit rhetorical, yes. But have you ever identified a housing development that is 90% affordable and 10% market rate?
I don't know that I have. I mean, basically, the reason I made the amendment the way, or the motion the way I did, is I think it's very important that what council does be consistent with the information packet, the information pamphlet. So that's why I made it that way. So under the terms of the way I read it, it could be 90% market rate and 10% affordable, or something in between. So it's not very restrictive, really.
I guess I asked the question mostly to make the point that I'm just not sure how practicable the amendment is. I don't think we're going to get an application that conforms to those parameters. And I don't want to preclude or exclude applications from 100% market rate housing. I don't want to sacrifice that to, Peter to pay Paul sort of situation. And you will probably recall 2 weeks ago, I was sympathetic to your point of view, and I still am, and I agree with why you're bringing this forward, and I thank you for making this debate transparent. But when push comes to shove, I guess my bluff was called. I really want to be able to support applications that include 100% affordable housing, and I think we're going to lose that possibility if we move forward with this amendment. So I will not be supporting the amendment.
Thank you.
All right, I
Councilmember Matthews?
respect that.
Excuse me just a minute, Councilmember McCarthy. Councilmember Matthews has a question or a statement.
Thank you, Mayor.
That's fine.
A couple to Councilmember McCarthy's motion with the amendment. I agree with him because I too feel uncomfortable with us not following, just to tighten it up a little bit more to where what the voters passed and read is what we're delivering. And if we do 100% affordable, if we don't put that restriction in, then we could have 100% affordable projects coming to us. And that wasn't the, at least the language that voters read. It was to make available to market rate rentals to encourage them to add affordable housing. We already have developers, both market rate and local nonprofits, that will focus strictly on 100% affordable. And this section of the bond was presented to incentivize market rate developers to add a affordable rate or affordable housing component. So I will second Councilmember McCarthy's motion. I do have a comment afterwards, or just a discussion, but I'll leave it at that for now.
We're at discussion. It's already been seconded.
It was more questioning to the Housing Commission on the rest of the bond disbursement and how we go about that. Can I ask that question now?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was just curious, and maybe I just didn't pay attention, which is very possible, but the great work for the sub-bond housing commission that was formed, and everybody worked really hard, and I want to say I appreciate staff and the subcommittee's work. I'm just curious of how the remaining $15 million in different segments, how those committees are going to be formed. Will there be public notice? And, you know, I know that as a council member, I'm new, so I'm still learning all the nuances, but on a regular commission appointment, we're involved in the selection process, and I know this was a subcommittee, so I just wanted to understand the process a little bit better.
Mayor, Councilmember Matthews, are you asking to understand the process that just took place or moving into the future?
Moving in the future.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to go down that road and have you say no, no, no. There are 3 identified activities remaining that were identified within the bond from a year ago. And one is expanding the down payment and closing cost assistance program. You, council, thank you, recently approved an amendment to the existing program which allows us to test some of the parameters. So we have new data moving as that is created and refined. We'll do a similar process, I anticipate, with the Housing Commission, but because of the volatility of an ownership market, did I say down payment and closing cost? So that's the next one we'll be tackling. Because of the volatility of that market, we anticipate consulting quite a few different individuals within the private market so that we can make sure what we're bringing forward can be flexible over time, given changing interest rates, changing housing market issues, et cetera. So we'll be talking with lenders, real estate folks, et cetera, not necessarily only commission members. Subcommittees, working groups. Working groups are not noticed publicly because they are I can't say subcommittee because a subcommittee is different under open meeting law. The working groups gather to work on the details. Those Housing Commission agendas, of course, are published publicly so people can come and participate in those discussions as well as when things come forward to council for consideration. The other 2 activities, one is redevelopment of our own city property. I don't anticipate a group working on that one. And the other one is adaptive reuse, which is targeted to adapting existing vacant structures from one use into rental housing.
That one is going to be a little bit, I was going to say hairier, a little bit fuzzier, because we don't have a model with which to follow, and so we have not yet scoped how we're going to approach that one. We wanted to get these first two underway and making a difference in the community before we tackled that one.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Councilmember House and then Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just speak to my rationale behind seconding this motion. I appreciate and support the conversation that Councilmember McCarthy is bringing forward with this proposal. Ultimately, my consideration on this has been kind of twofold in terms of the language that was included in the publicity pamphlet and then the potential impacts of this program. Ultimately, I agree that we have responsibility to the voters in terms of what they voted for regarding this particular program. However, where my mindset has kind of shifted on this is in terms of the potential impacts to the community. I think that while the overall intention is to incentivize the market rate developers and ensure that affordable housing has that incentive for inclusion, I also think that the overall objective of this program is to increase our supply and access for affordable housing. I think that given the conversation that we had 2 weeks ago in terms of the types of programs that were likely to be brought forward, ultimately, I think keeping that conversation broad and allowing even up to 100% affordable to apply for this funding does not mean that we are only going to be giving the funding to 100% affordable programs. I think in keeping it broad, we're opening the pot to a broader group of developers and housing providers. That means more opportunities for creating affordable housing. So while I agree with the sentiments that Councilmember McCarthy is bringing forward, and I wanted to ensure that that conversation was allowed to happen, I do think that by not having that language there, we are not going against what the public voted for, but we are potentially expanding and opening up more possibilities for what is needed within our community. Overall, in my perspective, the goal is the development and production of and getting shovels in the ground for affordable housing. And I think the longer that we spend kind of haggling over the minutiae of some of the language is more time that's spent away from that objective. So respectfully to Councilmember McCarthy, because I know where he's coming from on this, I wanted to allow the conversation to continue, but that's where my mind is on this. So thank you. And thank you, Councilmember McCarthy, for bringing forward the proposal as well.
Thank you. Councilmember McCarthy?
Well, thank you for all this good, intelligent discussion. I just want to say for the record that I personally would be fine with an all affordable project, but just out of respect for the voter information pamphlet and the history of some other, a few years ago, things were told in the information packet that didn't follow through by council, and people were kind of unhappy about that. I'm going to stick with my position. However, if the council decides to do otherwise, I totally respect that. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And because the outcome, the goal of getting affordable housing constructed is in the language as it's currently spelled out in the resolution does that, and I feel it also adequately addresses what was both on the ballot and in the voter pamphlet. I will not be supporting this amendment, but I appreciate the discussion. So we have...
just for clarification, I made a motion with conditions. It wasn't an amendment. So I'll pretend I'm the city attorney and say, if you don't agree with it, vote no on it. And then we can have a separate motion without the added provisions that I added.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember McCarthy.
Mayor, Council, and Councilmember McCarthy, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. All right, so we have...
When I grow up, maybe I'll be a lawyer.
We have a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Any additional discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. All right, I will entertain a motion to read resolution number 2023-51 by title only as currently written.
I move to read resolution number 2023-51 by title only.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. City Clerk.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council adopting the rental incentive bond program.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt?
I move to adopt resolution number 2023-51.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, staff, for all of your work on this for the past 20 years. All right, moving down to item number 12, discussion items. Butler Fourth Improvements Project, Design Alternatives Discussion. And this is discussion only.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members. My name is Jeremy DeGator. I'm a project manager at Capital Improvements here with the city, and tonight I'm joined by Nick Hall.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. My name is Nick Hall. I am the project manager for Burgess & Nipel, the consultant firm selected for this project. I have been a professional engineer for 5 years. I have been a road safety professional for 5 years. Safety is important to me. We'll be talking about that today, but thank you for having us up this evening.
Thank you, Nick. We are truly excited to be here today. I know it's an election night, so we'll do our best to work through this. There's a lot of information to cover, and we'll do our best to speed through it, but we're only going to really see the tip of the iceberg. We've been working hard for the last 10 plus months as a team. We're excited to be here tonight. So quick overview. We're just going to introduce this project, talk a little bit about the background, project goals. Then we'll talk about the corridor of the project as a whole, and then we'll kind of dive into the intersections, which have really been driving the large portion of the conversation for this project. We've done a pretty robust public outreach phase. We've went to multiple commissions. We held a public town hall meeting, and we'll kind of summarize the results and the rankings and the feedback that we received during that process. And then we'll kind of just talk through what the next steps are. And really the reason we're here tonight is to seek council direction. We'll be presenting a number of alternatives, and we have not begun design. So what you're going to see, everything is very preliminary. It's mostly there conceptual to convey a number of lanes or arrangements and so on, but the actual lines are all subject to move when we actually get into design. But we would like to get council direction on what the vision and what this project should look like moving forward so that we can dive full steam into design and proceed forward. While Nick and I are both standing up here tonight, we are just that tip of the iceberg. There has been a large, very active team that's been very very engaged with this process. So certainly staff within capital improvements, transportation, multimodal, sustainability, water services, stormwater, real estate, and others. We've also had our private stakeholders. We've had Mountain Line, we've had agendaq, and we have been coordinating with the commercial properties, primarily on the western side of the project, such as the Mobile's gas station, Black Bart's, and Little America. And of course, as you're aware, many of the developments that have happened have gone through entitlement process along that corridor, so their development has been coordinated with this project. A quick review of what this project looks like or what the extents are. Essentially from I-40, Little America, extending to the east along Butler Avenue, stopping short of the Sonawa Heights neighborhood. We'll be widening Butler. And of course, we'll also be doing improvements at the Harold Ranch Road intersection and along 4th Street, at some point south of Sparrow, continuing down through the Butler intersection, tying into where the Canyon Del Rio development is currently under construction. You may recall this project was actually 2 projects in the past. It used to be the Butler Avenue Widening Project and the 4th Butler Intersection Improvements Project. It has been combined, but it boils down to widening the existing 2-lane roadway section to a 4-lane road, 2 lanes, 2 travel lanes in each direction with a center median in those extents just described. The project is funded by both the old transportation tax and the new transportation tax, and a significant portion of developer contributions, as I just mentioned, as they went through that entitlement process. In lieu of them going out there building improvements that we would have to tear out in a number of years later, they contributed cash for us to come through and build their final improvements, driveways and frontage improvements, sidewalks across their properties. We won't spend a lot of time talking about the Butler Avenue Harold Ranch Road roundabout today. We'll show a little bit about that, but that intersection is slated to be a roundabout. This is largely driven by our desire to implement some access control along Little America, Black Bart's, and so on, which would essentially prevent trucks from being able to make left turns out of those parking lots, which would force someone leaving the Little America truck stop to make a right turn headed east. We have to provide them the ability to make a U-turn and get back to the interstate, because that's most of the traffic is going in that direction. So the roundabout accommodates that movement and allows for that access control along that frontage. We spent a lot of time evaluating a lot of the alternatives at the Butler 4th intersection. We'll dive into that in detail. And this project right now is not in design. We are in that scoping and outreach. So we are out here having both the internal difficult discussions, having the discussions with committees and commissions, and with the public about what this project should look like, making sure that we serve all of our users. As many of you are aware, we have a lot of development that is underway, that has happened, and is upcoming in this area. The big one is shown in the center of the screen. This is Canyon Del Rio, and this is roughly 1,500 housing units, whether it be apartments, townhomes, or single-family homes. That's roughly equivalent to another country club development, so it's quite sizable. This is a bit more dense than country club. There's also a retail component. There's several 100,000 square feet of retail, roughly equivalent to the Fry Shopping Center on Schweitzer Canyon currently. This is just the general list. We won't go through all of it. As you're aware, this continues to be an ongoing, very active corridor for development. Project goals. When we first started, when we kicked this project off just a little under a year ago, we established what the project goals were, and it really boiled down to improving facilities for all modes and all users along this entire corridor. Certainly, as we work through that process, we have to evaluate our adherence to the regional plan, to the carbon neutrality plan, our active transportation master plan, metro plans, Flagstaff in motion, and of course, zoning code and our engineering standards. At the end of the day, our goal is to achieve the greatest level of safety for all of our users, and this boils down to Vision Zero. You've probably heard this term. We haven't officially adopted a Vision Zero plan, but it boils down to the only acceptable number of deaths is 0. And there's a lot that goes into it, but that was a guiding light for us through this process.
So just to expand a little bit on Vision Zero, and as we're tying it into this project, it sounds like a great slogan that 0 deaths are acceptable, and some people think it just as such. But that is the goal, that not 1, not 2, not 5, especially not 6,000 fatalities are acceptable. We need to do all we can to prevent fatalities on our networks. There are many tools to achieve this, many principles to use to get towards this goal, and one of those is the safe systems approach. There's multiple facets of roadway safety that protect users of the corridor, and looking at engineering and maintenance and emergency services, whatever have you. Another piece to the safe systems approach is the assumption that humans will make mistakes, that no one is perfect and not perfect all the time. We need to make a system that allows for mistakes to happen and not cause fatalities or serious injuries. This leads to redundancy in systems. We need redundancy in safety systems to help achieve this goal of 0. Another piece that we'll show later how we're specifically applying this to the project, but a fairly easy concept to use in our designs moving forward towards this goal is separation of time, space, and energy. We've seen this before, that vehicles interacting with vehicles, pedestrians with pedestrians, that's usually fine. It's when we have the energy crossing difference, those interacting, where we face some of our greatest challenges. And mitigating that issue is one of our easiest steps to promoting safety and really achieving that goal of 0.
So this is a typical cross-section for a minor arterial, which both Butler Avenue and 4th Street are. We would typically have our 2 lanes in each direction, a center median. We'd have an on-street bike lane, curb gutter, that 5-foot furnishing strip or parkway that may be landscaped, and then we would have a 6-foot sidewalk. Very early on, I know council saw this before we even awarded the design contract, we made the decision to improve upon that cross-section. So in this scenario, we have done a number of things, and I'll walk you through. We still have that center median that will be landscaped. This helps to provide visual obstructions and to slow traffic. The lanes, instead of 12-foot wide, which was shown in previously, these will now be 11-foot wide travel lanes. The on-street bike lane has been removed and been physically separated both horizontally and vertically. So this creates the 22-foot wide kind of travel lane experience. When that bike lane is vacant, it feels as though it's additional space. We'll have that parkway, so we still have snow storage. We still have that buffer zone for safety and comfort. We will now have 11-foot wide pathways on either side. 5-foot will be a directional bike lane, and the other 6-foot will be that sidewalk. This will be on both sides of the street throughout the large majority of the project limits. We are still working on how we will tie into existing improvements on all the ends of the project. As we mentioned, this off-street bike lane, we've spent a lot of time talking about separated bike lanes in this community, and we're really excited that we're going to be able to incorporate this feature into this project. We have all different users across the spectrum that are going to use this corridor. We've got people that want to be totally separate, safe, and don't want to be in a stressful environment. Then we've got people in between that have some level of comfort and may be more experienced or comfortable mixing with traffic. And then we have our highly confident users who may be perfectly comfortable riding in a lane in the road. But these facilities do hope to serve all of these users well. I walked through some of those features, narrowing those lanes, some of the landscaping and removing of the bike lane. A lot of this goes to slow speeds along this corridor. So we have already, at a minimum, have reduced our design speed. Design speed for an arterial is typically 40 miles an hour. We have agreed to go to 35 for the design speed. It's important to understand, we know with higher speeds, outcomes are worse. So that's what this graphic is showing. And what this graphic is showing is just how fast a car is going when it would impact a pedestrian. When we're in the neighborhood of 20 miles an hour, we have extremely high survivability for a bicyclist or a pedestrian. As we get to those higher speeds, the 40 miles an hour or higher speeds along the corridor, that survivability drops dramatically. And that speaks to the Vision Zero. So us designing and implementing geometric changes, narrowing of lanes, and so on to help slow speeds along the corridor is extremely important.
Okay, with this slide, I wanted to showcase that we will be planning to design 2 mid-block crossings as part of this project. I'll get into their exact locations in a minute. They will be featuring the rapid flashing beacon setup that we are seeing commonly around town to alert drivers that a pedestrian or bicyclist or other active transportation member wants to cross the road. We will have those signals over both lanes. That's just having it very apparent to vehicular traffic that someone is wanting to cross at that moment. These signals will be including all of the most recent, newest features that would come in with a mid-block crossing or a typical traffic signal. This includes audible and visual locator tones for all users. There's the extended press for the additional audible cue for users that the signals are activated. You may now proceed with caution. I think that's on those. This image on the right, though, this is one of the locations for the proposed mid-block crossing. This is on the west end of the project, right about in the area of Little America, Sinclair, and the overnight truck parking. We have a paired mountain line bus stop just to the right off screen. We have the overnight parking. We see a lot of pedestrian traffic through this area. We see a lot of vehicular traffic in this area. This is a great location for having this enhanced crossing, signalizing to a point and having it very visible for drivers that people are trying to cross the road. This graphic here shows the existing FUTS network in the area of the project. You can see for almost the entire area of the project, except for 4th that was not yet paved, is ride with caution. So not one of the highest levels of comfort, absolutely. This next slide here shows, after this project, what it will become. This blue here is representative of the buffered path, the kind of 11-foot path, or the 5-foot directional bike lane with the 6-foot sidewalk, as Jeremy mentioned earlier, throughout the limits of this project. This slide here, we showcase the pedestrian and transit facilities that are both current and planned as part of this project. The bus symbols shown here, the green pair off to the west, that is the existing Mountain Line paired bus stop. The pair at Peak Point, that is about midway through the project, east-west, will be a paired stop, that will be opening, we anticipate, with the completion of this project. At Butler and 4th, there's an additional east-west paired bus stop that will also be planned to be open with the project. I would like to note that the north-south stops are planned for future sometime after the project. But these will all be stops that are planned for this project. The dashed black line you can see in here is representative of the enhanced pedestrian crossings, both the mid-blocks as well as at the intersections, which we'll get into a few slides, that either it will be a signal or for the roundabouts include those rapid flashing beacon setups for all crossings. Okay, here is a early preliminary design for the west end of the project, looking at the raised median that Jeremy brought up earlier, adding this into the corridor to help restrict some movements in this area. As it was mentioned earlier, we are still working closely and will continue to work closely with Mobile, Little America, Black Barts to work through the access and safety issues that we see in this area. As Jeremy also mentioned earlier, one of the primary goals for this area is for the semi-trucks leaving the Sinclair fueling station to be forced to make a right turn, that they will need to make a right instead of the left across Butler. They will go down to the roundabout at Harold Ranch, which will be on the next slide, and make a U-turn movement to come back to I-40 if that's their ultimate destination.
Quick question, Mayor. Just to put a finer point on it, none of these safety features currently exist on Butler, do they?
They do not.
Councilmember Matthews.
Just real quick, and I don't know if you'll have it on a future screen, but the slide that you showed us with the bike lane and the pedestrian lane off the road, do you have a map of how much of Butler that's going to, because you had mentioned that there's future issues of acquiring land and pushing things back. Can you show us a map of exactly where that design will go now?
So we've had meetings with ADOT. We're still trying to determine how we tie into the on-off ramp at I-40, but that will be our western limit. So we're going to carry those improvements as far to the west as possible. We have to consider right-of-way, evaluate that, and just consider all the other impacts. But we will have some version of those widened paths that go all the way to that on-off ramp. And then it will tie in to the existing widened section of Butler near the Sonawa Heights.
So it'll start, these off-the-road bike and ped lanes will start past the off-ramp, past Little America, Sinclair, and go east.
Correct. We still have to evaluate how much space we have there right-of-way wise, and of course the impacts on those adjacent businesses. So we may not have space for that buffer, the parkway, but we will have some form, or it may be a reduced width across there, but we will work with our multimodal planner to come up with the best option to provide enhanced facilities all the way from those limits to the east.
And just to add to that too, that for the improvements of the bicycle and pedestrian facilities that will tie into the existing structures north of 4th and then also east on Butler to the kind of existing sidewalk on street bike lane. Just the part that's to be determined as we move through design and with the timeline of adjacent projects is the south end of as 4th is being built out and eventually into the JW Powell corridor where that ties in. But there won't be any gaps along Butler and then to heading north as well.
While we're stopped, so it's anticipated that trucks leaving Little America will have to go right, and their next turnaround would be the roundabout at Harold Ranch Road, and so that can accommodate these big trucks. Okay.
I'll talk in more detail on that in the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I have a quick question. May I?
Vice Mayor started it. Go ahead.
And this ties into your comment. So when the trucks have to turn right, will there be a sign there that informs them that, you know, turn right and in the quarter mile or whatever it is, you can easily make a left turn in a roundabout or something? Because if they don't know that, they're from out of state, they might go, what do I do now?
Yes, there will be significant signage. There are challenges with oversigning projects. We are well familiar with that, but we will have appropriate signage, most likely working with the trucking community to determine exactly what that should be. There will be arrows pointing, all traffic must go right. We will be including that. We will be including signs to I-40. That's fairly common as well. And then at the roundabout too, there'll be wayfinding on the sign that kind of discusses which leg goes where. It'll say to I-40 for the return movement.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Carry on.
All right, for the Harold Ranch roundabout, I would like to start with discussing about the truck movement. There's a few things that come into it and important to share information. There was a recent law signed into, or state law signed, that semi-trucks in Arizona may take both lanes of roundabouts. So it's all-encompassing across the state. We were seeing this issue happening regardless of it being allowed by law, but it was passed by law. Sometimes this may cause some concern. We were seeing it happen anyway, and there is a benefit that does come out of it for us with the designs here. By not designing where a semi-truck has to stay in a lane and can go between the lanes and take that full movement, we can actually make the overall roundabout smaller because we don't have to make sure that the truck and trailer stays in a lane. It has more width. We can make the overall size smaller, which does help us with speed management, impacts, etc., crossings, everything is there's benefit to it. To discuss this geometrically, we do have the 4-lane corridor moving east-west through the roundabout. There's 2 lanes for eastbound and westbound. For north and south, there are just single lanes in each direction. It does accommodate the truck U-turn movements. And then for each of these crossings here, you can see there's the black kind of symbology there for the signals. It's very typical for engineering design, but this indicates those rapid flashing beacons for every crossing across the legs of this roundabout.
So I just wanted to take a quick step back to that law about trucks being able to use the lanes and roundabouts. ADOT is currently working on signage that would be posted at roundabouts to convey that to motorists. As Nick said, it allows us to decrease the size of the roundabout. That helps us with speed control. And it also, frankly, I think brings law in line with reality that a big truck would take that space anyways. So I think it gives us more flexibility on the design side as well.
And just a small note on that, with the public outreach as part of this project, we've been passing that note on to every opportunity we can through the project for the town hall and various commissions and committees.
So that's a high-level overview of what will happen on the corridor of this project, the different treatments, crossings, bus stops, and so on. As we mentioned, we spent a lot of time looking at the Butler 4th intersection. We're going to spend a fair amount tonight just looking at, we had a lot of in-depth discussions. These were challenging discussions, and I think we considered a lot of different alternatives, and we came up, we're excited to present our preferred alternative tonight to you that has been based on both this process and all the public outreach and feedback that we've received to date.
Okay, so, sorry. It's been quite a process, as we've kind of alluded to through this, that there's been a lot of discussion, pros, cons, how can we evaluate this, what do we need to use? This needs to be multidisciplinary. How do we figure out the best preference to bring to you all tonight? I'm just going to summarize through this slide. There's a lot to it. Basically, we built up to a total of 11 alternatives for the intersection. We were able to take that down to 3 to have a deep dive review and multidisciplinary review. Even that first cut included various factors of traffic, delay, safety, emissions, but really taking down to the 3, we went into the deep dive process of what do we need to evaluate this by, developing that criteria as a project team, and then actually evaluating these alternatives against it. We did pick a preferred alternative from these 3, including the no build, so technically 4. We did go through the public outreach phase through the various committees, commissions, and the town hall. And that actually brought us back to having another alternative brought in that you will all see here today that has now become the preferred alternative from the project team. So first to talk on this slide and the next are not part of the 3 that made it to the deep dive evaluation, but did want to note that it was brought up numerous times throughout this project in the effort of, well, can we make it smaller? Can we make it smaller? And there is definitely pros to that, of course. So to mention on these 2 that did not make it to the cut of the 3, the first one being a 5x5 signalized intersection. There's a lot of nomenclature you'll see through the next slides describing these alternatives, and just briefly to let you know that for the signalized intersections, it basically relates to the number of lanes wide in both directions. So it's approximately 5 lanes across east-west and then north-south as well for this intersection. Some benefits was it had the smallest footprint. It was the smallest one proposed. That leads to reduced pedestrian and bike crossings because it's the smallest intersection. And with this one and every alternative you'll see tonight, we will, no matter what, be employing the protected intersection features that will go into detail of how those apply to the signals, and the roundabouts. Some drawbacks were the queuing lengths and significant delay that we were seeing level of service, the LOS, F for 6 movements, level of service E for 3 movements, and an average failing both in the AM and the PM, and ultimately not meeting current city standards. Another that did not make it to the cut of 3 is this 2x2 roundabout. The nomenclature here relates to the circulating lanes through the roundabout. So again, that east-west, north-south, but you can see it's basically 2 all the way around, 2x2 on this. Benefits were reduced pedestrian crossing lengths. It'd be 2 lanes at a time, overall 4, so per side. Reduced likelihood of high severity crashes. This is something that we'll go into more detail coming up, but roundabouts through geometry, not signage, not lighting, force vehicles to slow down, that we can use physical features to make cars go slower and have compliance with that. We can design it down to 15, 20 mile per hour entrance speeds. Having that reduction in high severity crashes is a great benefit. A downside to roundabouts is you see an increase in property damage crashes. So there's a lot more fender benders, side swipes, but people ultimately walk home at the end of the day and less likely to even go to the hospital. More drawbacks, again, delays for this setup here. We had level of service F for one movement, E for 5 of them, and overall average level of service D in the AM and B in the PM, making it unfortunately not meet current city standards. With that, that'll take us to the 3 alternatives that did make the cut through the initial evaluation. We'll talk on those. We'll go through the public outreach discussion and then bring in that additional alternative that was brought in later.
Excuse me one moment. Councilmember Matthews, did you want to ask your question now, or was it for later?
I can wait till they're done, because it's a general question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, alternative A was a 7x7 intersection. It is 7 lanes wide, and yes, 7 lanes is a lot. There's dual left turn lanes in all directions except westbound. We had designated right turn lanes in all directions. It did incorporate the protected features that we'll see in a second. We'll zoom into and talk on them. It did result in a level of service C, which is acceptable by level of service, but resulted in a 102-foot long pedestrian crossing. Next is the 6x6 intersection. It's important to note that part of this is 6 lanes, part of it is 7, but not truly active live traffic. So it's still technically 6 lanes of traffic, but you can see on the southbound and westbound legs, there is a additional width just to make sure that the through lanes match up across the intersection. Again, we had the designated right turn lanes for the south and westbound directions, protected features, level of service D on this layout, and still that 102 pedestrian crossing because we still have that same width. So zooming into the intersection crossing and discussing the protected intersection features, one of the most important to note, in my opinion, I think on this one, is the curb return, or the curve, really, if you're making a right-hand turn as a vehicle. Historically, it's been designed of, we can make this bigger and bigger, and people can move faster, and it's really easy to make a right turn. And that really did not take into consideration, well, what about people trying to cross there, or bicyclists as well. So really it has become, the standard should be across the nation, but we're utilizing on this project of reducing that to the absolute smallest size to promote slowing down vehicles making that right turn. The magenta color represents a truck apron that, thank you, Jeremy. This is raised, but still mountable by a semi-truck trailer. It will be very uncomfortable for a car to go over it. They could, but again, extremely uncomfortable and might cause damage. So it really is just for trailing trailers to make that movement and still keep that curve small for regular vehicular traffic. The green also indicates the bicyclist waiting area, kind of a queuing area before crossing again if you're making both crosses, and then the pedestrian crossings here. Alternative C was a 2x2 roundabout again. However, now it includes channelized right turns on every leg. So you will see the basically 3 approach lanes. At the roundabout, it is still only 2 circulating lanes in each direction, though. For each crossing, we would be including the rapid flashing beacon arrangement. And again, geometry we can use to slow down cars coming at the crossings, coming into the intersection. We can force vehicles to slow down and, again, get compliance. Part of that, though, that, again, too, as a last measure, if absolutely needed, we can even raise the crosswalks because of the slower speeds. We can't do this at a signalized intersection, but with a reduced speed at a roundabout, we can also raise the crosswalks and have that tabletop feature that, again, greatly promotes slower speeds. This resulted in a level of service B, and the overall crossing for pedestrians is 104 feet. That is all the way across. We do have less lanes, really 5 lanes, but it's 2 lanes. There's a median refuge area, another 2 lanes, another refuge area, and another lane before getting across a single leg. So zooming into it, I previewed you a little bit of the distance crossing, but it's important to note here that the experience of users trying to cross a roundabout. And this has been vocalized several times throughout the project, and we knew it would be, and as a project team we had several voices about crossing roundabouts. Vehicles may not stop, or they could not stop. We will be using the flashing beacons to alert drivers that someone wants to cross. You should be slowing down, stopping, and yielding. One benefit we do see, though, is for a signal, if you push the button, you may be waiting a whole nother cycle or 2 before you can actually go. We do actually expect and do see quite often a quicker time to cross. You can start crossing sooner once a vehicle yields, and you can start making that movement. Another piece that's important to note, though, is through safety, through the work I do, Jeremy, the team, we've seen this nationally, that it feels a little bit less comfortable crossing a roundabout. You don't feel safe and warm and cozy. But we do have red light runners. That is a real issue that typically will lead to a fatality due to speeds for left turns, sometimes rights. This does force vehicles to slow down. A pedestrian or bike is promoted to interact with the vehicle operator. Are they actually slowing down? Okay, I think I can cross. This person's not slowing down. I shouldn't cross. So it feels a little less comfortable, but we do see it as an improved safety and really the outcome being more safe.
Historically, roundabouts have been a challenge for some visually impaired people because they can't see, they can't hear, particularly with multi-lane roundabouts. It's tough to determine whether or not there's an acceptable gap to be able to cross. That's why signalization is critical to help alert drivers. Some of the features, the audible tones and so on, to guide those pedestrians as well. And it all comes back to speed, right? We spent some time talking about speed as it relates to vehicles and reducing the severity of a vehicle-to-vehicle crash. But when we're slowing these down, placement of crosswalks is critical. So these are placed not too far from the roundabout, not too close. You're trying to pick that sweet spot to where you have the lowest speeds possible, and you're in the position where you are directly in front of the driver and they're not already looking to the left. So crosswalk placement for roundabouts is critical. Done properly, and with all these gold standard treatments with flashing lights, we'll evaluate raised crossings and so on. This can be an extremely safe and inviting crossing for any users.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier that we took a multidisciplinary review of these 3 to ultimately try and find a preferred alternative. We ended up coming up with 7 category groups, I'll call them, which each one had numerous different criteria within them. I'll quickly go through what was kind of included in each of these groups and then just kind of walk through our scoring across them. So the first category being vehicular operations. This included level of service and delay. This included VMT and VHT for vehicle miles traveled and vehicle hours traveled. We did look at school circulation and we did look at emissions. Second category of truck circulation. This was primarily focused on how well trucks can navigate through the intersection. Number 3, transit accommodation. Similar, but looking at Mountain Line and how can we accommodate Mountain Line access through this intersection. Currently, and I believe through the future, there is a diverging path that comes through this intersection. So parts of the day, the eastbound buses may go north. They may continue through eastbound. So with that movement, the stop needs to be to the right-hand side of the road, and getting into the through lane is fairly easy. Getting all the way over to a left lane or making that left turn movement, especially the closer you are to an intersection, it becomes more difficult. Number 4, this is pedestrian and bike circulation. This was looking more so at the pedestrians and bikes and vehicle interaction in this category. Sorry, my notes were not as detailed on this one. So we looked at pedestrian and bike comfort on this, and then also ADA, PROAG, Americans with Disability Act provisions through the project. Number 5, predicted crash frequency. We looked at vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle predictive crashes through the corridor. Again, mentioning on the roundabout that overall expecting more crashes per year, but a increase in lower severity and an overall reduction in those fatal and serious injuries. Number 6, the pedestrian bike interface. Here we more so looked at crossing distances and refuge islands and aligning with Vision Zero and safety features, that there are different interactions and different feels to it. It's not just one's larger than the other, specifically between the signal and the roundabout. Number 7, the cost and land impact category. Here we considered construction, right-of-way, maintenance costs, and then construction impacts, both time and to adjacent properties, environmental impacts, and then impacts to the character of the area.
So all told, there were roughly 70 subcategories that you don't see here that are rolled up into these scores. So this was a challenge for us to work through. There's a lot of different things to consider. Some of them are at odds with each other at times.
With that, through this exercise, alternative C did score the highest, as you can see, with the no build option being the lowest. This information we took out to the committees and commissions and the public town hall. This slide here, we show the average ranking by commission and committee. So you can see for the Bicycle Advisory Committee, Pedestrian Advisory, Sustainability, Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living, and Transportation Commission, the average votes per each group, with a total average resulting at the bottom. Alt B here, the 6x6 signalized intersection, scored the highest, with C being the second place, no build again being last. Diving into these scores a little bit more, this slide here quantifies the number of first, second, third, fourth place votes of all of these committees and commissions. So you can see here that yes, B was the preference, but we did have a close scoring of C, Alt A, and the no build being definitely preferred, or sorry, not preferred, but in last and third place.
So our final outreach effort was our public meeting, which we held at the Aquaplex back on October 18th. We had well over 100 people in that room. It was well attended. There was robust discussion. We gave a similar presentation and did a extended question and answer. We also opened up a public survey. Hopefully some of you may have seen that. We did get 179 survey responses. We'll review what some of the outcomes of that was. And of course, we have included a link to those responses. In total, counting who attended that meeting and those survey responses, we're estimating roughly 235 residents interacted or provided feedback with this project. On the survey results, one of the primary questions that we asked was asking people to give us their rankings. So people were allowed to rank the preferred alternatives in their preferred ranking. As we can see here, the 2x2 roundabout, and this included those channelized right turn lanes, is important to note. That's what was presented to the commissions, committees, and the public was significantly more preferred across all of the votes received. I think we had 71 in support of the 2x2 roundabout as number one, and 34 in support of the 6x6. We also asked a bunch of questions about project priorities, and so we asked people to rank this on a score of 1 to 5 or 0 to 5, with 5 being very important and 0 or 1 being not important at all. And we can see that safety, bike and ped, environment, and these other ones scored very high. So these are very important priorities for this project to consider. Frankly, pretty much all of the priorities we had in there, you were able to select. You could have scored all of these as 5s or all as 1, so you could have scored any way that you wanted to. We also asked specifically about some of the bicycle and pedestrian treatments or priorities that we have incorporated into the project. The separated bike lanes were extremely popular. We also asked questions about the protected intersection features, the flashing beacons, raised crosswalks. We did ask the question about a separated bike ped tunnel at Butler and 4th. We'll come back to that later. And of course, asked about the mid-block crossings. And again, separated intersection or separated bike lanes, those protected intersections scored very important, and frankly, everything scored as important. We did ask specifically whether you prefer on-street or separated bike lanes, and as you can see here, we were overwhelmingly, strongly preferred separated bike facilities. It is important to note that we did have 4.5% strongly preferring on-street, and I think this is probably reflective of those extremely confident users that are perfectly comfortable being out and interacting. There are some complications with the separated features here as it relates to how a pedestrian or bicyclist would interact at an intersection. Once you're separated, it's very hard to introduce them back into traffic. So a bicyclist using the separated bike lanes at the intersection would essentially remain as a pedestrian or bicyclist using those crosswalks versus entering the flow of traffic. And then finally, we got all of this feedback, whether it was the commissions, the committees. We had a lot of good discussions. We spent multiple hours with many of these committees. We heard the feedback, the concerns as it related to the size of the intersection, the concerns as it relates to roundabouts. How can we make crossings better for pedestrians and bicyclists? And so while we were doing those presentations, we continued to work on optimizing our roundabout alternative, which was our preferred. And we're pretty excited to present this here today. I'm going to let Nick kind of talk through the details of what this is, but this is a significant reduction in overall footprint and laneage compared to what it is. I think this presents significant benefits to all users, whether you're on a bike or you're walking on a wheelchair or in a vehicle.
So the nomenclature here, you can see this is the 2 by 1.5 roundabout, so it is what it is there. Basically, we have 2 lanes circulating east-west, and then 2 for northbound, 1 for southbound. So that's where that nomenclature kind of came from. The circulating lanes within the roundabout, we've reduced 1 lane in one of those legs. The outer legs approaching and both leaving the roundabout, we were able to reduce 6 lanes from the alternative C that you saw earlier. You can see that in each direction we have 4 lanes approaching in 2 directions and 3 in the other, on each leg. So overall smaller footprint, less crossing distance for pedestrians and bikes. We will still include the rapid flashing beacons with all crossings here. It's a little hard to see in the detail on this slide, but there will be currently planned, and there will be a question later on this too, of including refuge islands between the through lanes as well. So there is potential to have a lot of single lane crossings. You can see here that only 3 of the legs actually have pedestrians and bicyclists crossing 2 lanes at a time. The rest are all single lane crossings. We'll still be evaluating the raised crosswalks, and this did result in a level service C and with a 86-foot pedestrian crossing from one corner to the next. So this is coming back to the scoring matrix you saw earlier. We now have the new column added for this alternative D. The scores are off to the right. Again, this we saw more of a balance between the vehicular and the active transportation users. That we're seeing the slower speeds, we're seeing reduced crossing lengths. We get all the benefits and still have a smaller intersection. So as Jeremy mentioned, we are excited to present this one here today. It is important to note that this came after our outreach with all the committees, commissions, and the town hall from the input that we received from them to get to this point. So this was not presented to the committees and commissions for alternative D. Another piece to note that you may have seen in this coming up to the point is that for a few of the categories for alternative C, it did receive more points when we went back through and scored this again. And that was just through the project team learning more and understanding about the benefits of roundabouts and that they can have significant benefits for pedestrians and bikes as well.
So we're here, I'm just going to briefly talk about what happens after tonight. We're here tonight asking for direction, and we'll get into the details of what specifically we're asking for. If we get direction tonight, we will proceed into design. We will be back in front of council at several points in the future. We will be back to process a contract modification. We did this in a phased approach, so we did phase A with Burgess and Nyepel, and we will be back to extend their contract to take us through final design. We will also be delivering this project through the construction manager at risk, the delivery process, so the CMAR. So we will be back sometime this winter to bring that contractor on board for the design phase services, and we're continuing to work with Burgess and Nyepel. If we're able to continue and dive strictly into design, we may be able to get shovels in the ground in late 2024. There are some advantages to CMAR to where you could potentially phase and get started on some of the underground work while you're still finalizing some of the surface improvements. So real quick, what we're here tonight, what we're asking from council is for direction moving forward. Typically, you would have seen this project much further along. We would have actually been in design. It's important to note we haven't done design. And so now is the time for us to make high-level, framework-level decisions that would help guide us in design and so on. So the first question is, we've presented our recommended alternative, which is this we're calling optimized roundabout. We would like to have guidance on whether that continues to be council's direction as well. Should the roundabout option be selected, we do have some roundabout specific.
So to discuss these very quickly, that as mentioned earlier with the voice to us, that it matters both, that the individual crossings and the total amount of space I need to travel to get across, that was voiced to us many times. So we're here to ask for guidance on that. That was the second bullet under roundabout. My apologies. The first bullet relates to, in the upper right of this screen, there's two configurations for crossing the legs of a roundabout. And they both have their pros and cons, and we've heard support and lack of support for both, I would say. But one, as part of protected roundabouts, it's been shown for more of a direct path, kind of minimizing that overall distance. And it was told to us from bicycle users that this is preferable, that I can get quicker across, that it's a straight shot for me, it's easier. But then if we look at the offset crossing, that kind of top right, this has additional safety features for allowing cars to queue behind or in front. It makes it a safer spot for pedestrians to cross. So both would be fine, but we see between the pedestrian and bicycle worlds, there's more of a lean one way or the other.
Can I ask you to clarify what you just said about cars queuing behind?
Yeah, sorry, I may have gone a little too fast over that with not enough detail. So if we look at that upper right image and look at the approach, that would help. If we look at the approaching lanes to the roundabout, there is that yield condition before the crosswalk, which we use all across town, that's important. But there is space behind the crosswalk for a single vehicle to get beyond the crosswalk and now focus on vehicles and that interaction to move on. So they're not jumping from the crosswalk and trying to judge jumping into vehicular traffic too far back. So it's kind of a two-stage if there's pedestrians and vehicles present.
And on the left, what would that look like?
So it's the main difference for pedestrians. There'd still be that 20-foot behind. The storage, we would still have that. But it's really keeping the main difference between these two is keeping the proximity to the intersection. So from the top right, we can take it all the way up to 20 feet away. On the left side, it's actually further back. So overall, your crossing to get from one side to the other of the intersection would be longer. It's stretched out. The crossings are further away as well. So that's the...
So the straight crossings don't provide quite as much flexibility to get the optimal placement for those crosswalks relation to the geometry of the roundabout, whereas the Z's allow you to kind of reorient and get those crosswalks in the optimal location to the roundabout. In both instances, you're going to get these in a good spot, but the one is just a little more flexible than the other. So we will come back and dive into that. Should the roundabout move forward, we can talk through the details of what that is. One of the other questions is just the grade separated pedestrian crossing at Butler and 4th. The graphic in the lower right corner there, we are going to be rerouting that Spruce Avenue wash portion through this intersection. We didn't speak about it, but that intersection will be raised 6 to 7 feet, bringing it up out of, so it will not flood during high flow events. So there will be a diagonal storm drain crossing through there. There are opportunities to either have a combined facility or a separate but adjacent facility that would parallel that storm drain that would allow you to kind of cut through that corner in a separated manner. While this doesn't really support like general pedestrians that are necessarily going from Sinawa to Little America or so on, it does align well with the Foots network. So we have that Foots trail that comes down the west side of 4th Street that crosses and goes down south of Butler. And of course, there are plans for Foots trail to continue to the west towards the bluffs before it turns off into that wash. So that will be one of the considerations. We'll provide more information. Roughly, we're currently estimating that's about a $2 million ad to include that. Separated crossings are not cheap, as you know. So at this point, at the end of the day, we're really trying to get an alternative that we can advance into design so that we can really dive in, do the good work, come back, share the updates, provide another opportunity to help refine and guide the project, and then allow us to proceed towards final design and construction. So this concludes our presentation at this point. We're obviously here to answer any questions, and we look forward to that.
Thank you. All right, first up we have Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification purposes, early in the presentation, you talked about different speed limits. Is Butler an 8-out road or is it Flagstaff Road? I mean, who determines the speed limit?
Butler is a Flagstaff Road. ADOT right-of-way ends roughly at the on-off ramps there at that signal.
Okay. Because what I was thinking when you were showing me, of course, you know, more fatalities, the faster we go, right? I'm not as concerned about it if we do have separated bike and ped paths. That would help. But I keep thinking about all those houses being built on Butler, and, you know, I'm thinking, you know, people trying to punch it to get on the road if the speed limit is too high. And so I'm just kind of saying that out loud to say I just have a little bit of discomfort. I know that if it's too slow, people just won't yield to it, but I want to be very, very sensitive to our bike and ped population, because all of these conversations really, I think we all talk about that being a top priority. What I don't like, and what you're presenting today, I like, but what I don't like is us having, give you direction, and then you spend a few $100,000 on it, and then a new council comes and says, no, I want to do it this other way. So I hope that whatever direction we give you is one that we'll stick with, because I saw another project before I got on council where there was a totally redirect, and it was very expensive, and I want to be sensitive to taxpayer money. So, and I'm also, you know, anxious for JW Powell connection to help relieve that. So I like the tabletop crosswalks added, speaking of spending money, but first time around. And I do like this last option in helping, because when you were showing us the graph, I didn't like option the one before you got to D, because it minimized the bike and ped safety. So I was kind of swaying towards option C until you got to, or option B until you got to D. So I'm in favor of D, and I'm in favor of the flashing lights and the separated bike and ped lanes. I really want to see that happening. I think we should have it all the way on Butler. And I know there's some challenges there when you get more into town, but those are just my comments on that. So I think, oh, and was there, because this roundabout is right off Harold Ranch Road, right? And so what's the north road? So I'm thinking Butler, east and west,
So
south is Harold?
I think I failed to mention that Harold will be realigned slightly, the north end portion of it, to come up to this roundabout. So the center of the roundabout will be approximately located at the east property edge of Black Bart's. So it's a few hundred feet down the road. There'll be a north exit that could be used by Black Bart's if they choose to in the future, but also for the development in that upper right corner there can access that northern portion. So it'll be realigned a little bit further down the road.
So that north leg will be the driveway to the Butler Lofts project.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember McCarthy?
Thank you, Mayor. I have some comments regarding the intersection at 4th Street. First of all, I'll say that the 7x7 or 6x6 intersections are completely off out of the question in my mind. Why would I say that? Because for a bicyclist or pedestrian to go across 6 lanes of traffic is just ridiculous. But now, see, but people say, well, it's even farther for the roundabout. Well, there's a big difference. The big difference is that they only have to cross like 2 lanes at a time. And then there's a refuge area where they can stop. So they really only have to negotiate 2 lanes at a time, not 6 lanes at a time. So I think that we need to increase the widths of the refuge areas, because I think those are a very important part of the roundabout design, so that, bicycles can stand there and, its front tire isn't being hit by 1 lane of traffic and the back tire isn't being threatened by another lane of traffic. So it needs to be enough room, like, I don't know what the number would be, like 8 feet or something, not like 1 foot. That's inadequate. We also need to have where a pedestrian or bike is trying to cross 2 lanes, there needs to be a sign telling people that watch, there's 2 traffic lanes. You make sure that they're both stopped before you walk out. I'll just really tell you a story. The woman, the girl that lived across the street from me when I was being raised, she walked across the street where a car had stopped. At the second lane, the car didn't stop, and she got hit, and she is now dead. So we need signs saying, be careful, 2 lanes ahead. So the refuge areas, very important. They need to be increased. So I support either alternative C 2x2 or the D 2x1.5. I think I can live with either one of those. I do think it's good to have grade separation, and we definitely should look into a below grade pedestrian tunnel. If that's at all practical, we should do that. And I like the offset crossing, like the slide that's on the screen right now, the very upper right-hand corner. Why do I like that? It's not as good for bicycles, but it's good for somebody that's even more vulnerable, and that's true. We talked about this when we talked about the roundabout for 4th Street up north, because we're concerned that the kids will just run right across. So the 2 lanes of traffic stopped, but they just run across and think the other ones are going to stop. Well, if there's a little bit of an offset, they're a Z, or I guess what we're calling an offset cross. I think it makes people stop and think and go, oh, there's traffic coming here too. I have to be really careful. So that's kind of, I think I covered all your questions, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councilmember Sweet?
Thank you. A couple of questions. I guess first off, thank you for listening to the community and coming up with some alternatives to the designs, and I really appreciate the time and effort you put into this. I am wondering how you came up with the 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, and how does that correlate when you go into the roundabout? If you're going that speed, how are we slowing them down to get into the roundabout?
Speed limit is largely dictated by engineering standards for arterial roads. It would generally be 40, so we have reduced it by 5. Again, I think Councilmember Matthews spoke to some of this, as far as speed. Speed is a challenge. At some point, once we get down into the lower speeds, 30 and less, the geometry becomes less and less impactful. Certainly, a big wide road is going to encourage high speeds, which we have not built here. We've been very conscious to narrow this up and keep this feeling like you want to drive slower. And it does get to that point of, at some point, it just becomes a number on a sign. Of course, I think there's probably much more engaged conversation around speed limits that will likely need to take place as we move forward.
So to add on the first response and then address the second, one benefit that was not mentioned earlier, that if it is a paired roundabout system in this corridor and not a signal that if you potentially get a green and can come down the hill at 40, 45 heading towards the interstate, we will see slower speeds just in that corridor between the intersections if there's 2 roundabouts due to the slowing down at the roundabouts. Now, discussing how we achieve that, I would assume it's been used here, but a lot of times in industry we now say modern roundabouts, and it's like, well, it's the old roundabouts. But there's been, again, through engineering iteration, what can we do better, that a few aspects to roundabout design is for this roundabout, and especially high-speed roundabouts when you get onto state highways, when you see them coming up in Camp Verde, Chino Valley area, we have what's called speed-reducing curves. So you don't just jump into the roundabout, it kind of swings you off to the right, swings you off to the left, and then you're ready to enter. So those curves actually start reducing and get smaller and smaller as you approach. So you start feeling uncomfortable, you start to being kind of physically confined and getting that target 15, 20 mile per hour entry speed. Another piece that I think is important to note, it's very much in the nuance of engineering, but when we lay this out and design it and design to that speed of the vehicle, we use a fastest path analysis that we call it. So it actually takes into account a car changing lanes where they really shouldn't be, but cheating the curves basically. Like if I change lanes, I can go a little bit faster and make it smoother. That's actually the speed that we designed to. So that vehicle that's illegally jumping lanes basically is still going slow enough. So that's all the pieces we use to make sure that we get compliance from it.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing up I forget what term you use, but the dual roundabouts, that does slow you down. I was in a town this summer that had that, and I recall thinking that to myself because now I pay attention to roundabouts all the time. Okay, so I want to hear more of the discussion with council, but I am, again, thankful that you brought alternative D in. And any time that we can do anything to shorten the time it takes to get from point A to point B for a pedestrian, I would like to keep pushing that. And I'm not sure if we can achieve that, maybe we don't need the refuge islands. It's a thought. And the tunnel, I don't know if that is cost, if that would be something we could do. Always up for investigating that. And I'll leave it at that for now and see what my colleagues say. Vice Mayor?
I was going to wait until after public comment to weigh in.
All right, me as well. But I just want to share thanks, and I've heard a lot of positive input from the public about the outreach that you did and the amount of public input that you took along this project. So thank you. First up, we have Adam Shimoni.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, leadership, staff, members of the public. Adam Schminley speaking today on behalf of Flagstaff Biking Organization, who put a lot of effort into this project. I want to thank Jeremy, Nick, Mark, and the team for their work on this project and all the public outreach that was done. This corridor, as you know, doesn't have many pedestrians currently, but will in a number of years. And so it's extremely important that we build for all, especially given that there's 2 schools right there, and there's going to be a lot of kids that are either going to walk, or if we don't do it right, they're going to drive, which is going to add to why we build such large projects, right? So I attended much of the public outreach done, and concerns were shared at most every meeting I attended that this was too big, too fast, too much for cars, and they felt that they had to choose between 3 projects that, in the chart that you saw, none of which put pedestrians first. I think the highest ranking was a 3. Why wasn't any of those 5s for pedestrians? You know, think about that for a minute. And it's because we still put cars first. But that being said, I think staff did do a good job at trying to accommodate pedestrians and their needs. In the Flagstaff Biking Organization's letter that was sent to you all, concerns were raised around modeling and how modeling is done, such as NAH and how NAH might impact the modeling, and how we just make all sorts of kind of guesses as to what the modeling might need to be, but yet we rely on the modeling to determine levels of service for these different projects, right? We're not considering a 5-lane protected intersection because of the modeling and how that results in levels of service for cars. But yet the modeling itself is a guesstimate, right? We have no idea really what's going to end up being 20 years from now and the real need of J.W. Powell, et cetera. So really think about how these levels of services are playing into things through the modeling. I'm going to give a few comments on behalf of FBO. In regards to Alternative D, I want to thank staff for that. I think that that is a decent option. I'm not fully on board with it 100%, jumping with joy, but I think it's a real honest attempt to do something better for the community and hearing what the public is saying. So raised crosswalks are needed. The median needs to be 12 feet, not 15 feet. Turn movements need to be sharp in the entrance points and around the roundabouts. Little details, right? But those details go a long way. Beacons need to let pedestrians get through with 1 push and not 3 pushes to get through 1 leg. And arrow markings are needed along the road for bikes and drivers to know that these lanes are for bikers as well. I appreciate you hearing my public comment, and I'm here for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you repeat those bullet points that you just said?
Thank you, Mayor. I would be glad to. So raised crosswalks go a long way in slowing down traffic. Median needs to have trees along with being a smaller width, not 15, 16 feet, but more like 12 feet.
And let me ask you, what is the reasoning for that?
Distance traveled for pedestrians. I'm not fully sure exactly how that impacts the intersection and the crossing for the pedestrian at that point. And if it doesn't have an impact, then I guess 15 feet is okay. But I just don't see the real value other than, and maybe this is a good question for staff, but if it lessens the distance a pedestrian needs to cross, that's a good thing, right? Turn movements into the roundabouts and around the roundabouts is a small detail that Mark and the team with Nick and Jeremy talk a lot about and go a long way in slowing cars down as they enter into the roundabout and navigate it. And I think those types of details are important. And if they aren't voiced by us, then I think staff often will default to more of a car free-flowing movement, which is a difference of a few miles an hour, which can be life and death. And then the beacons, if you look at the design, especially for the roundabouts, often, and staff hasn't necessarily gotten into this level of detail, I don't believe, but to cross 1 leg of this roundabout here on the bottom, you have to push a beacon 3 times as a pedestrian to cross. There's ways to set it up where you can push the beacon once, and the pedestrian will have cars waiting for them, and they can just cross. And I think that that goes a long way in putting the pedestrian first. And then sharrow markings, if you don't know what those are the bike lane markings on the actual car lane that say share the lane with bikers, and they have the bike symbol. And often what you see, FBO talks a lot about this, the board, that often if you have good separated infrastructure, cars expect you to utilize it. But there is a small percentage of riders who will want to take the lane, and they might act aggressively to cyclists in their vehicles if they feel like, hey, this is my lane, you have yours, use yours. But if there's sharrow markings on the lane that say, hey, share the lane with cyclists, that driver will then hopefully relax and say, okay, this lane's for both of us to share, right? So those little details go a long way. And then the last thing that I actually forgot to mention is the speed limit. Like Jeremy mentioned, 35 miles an hour, which really means 40, maybe even plus for some of us, results in fatality 90% of the time. So why not bring it down to 30, right? Where then that really means 35. And that really makes a big difference in fatality rates. So if they don't hear from you saying, hey, we want you to build to 30 and design for 30, they're going to design for 35. And the last thing I'll say about that, Mayor, is that both your council and the previous council both said for Butler on the west side of town that we want to see that lowered from 35 to 30. So why not have that be one unified speed limit east to west Butler, 30 miles an hour, and really just create a culture of slowing people down, which impacts them by a matter of seconds, but yet can save lives, right? And maybe make them a little bit more aware of their surroundings. Thank you. If anyone else has any questions, I am available, but I appreciate it.
Councilmember Matthews, do you have a question?
I do. Adam, is there any actual data that we could research about the share your lane with a bicycle, how much that reduces any accidents? Is there any information out there that can be researched?
I'd have to look into that, and I'm happy to do so. I wonder if Martin Ince, our city multimodal planner, might have something to say about that, given his expertise. But I can check with the team and check with people like Martin and send something to you and the rest of the council once I find something.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that. And then just another plug overall, and I know it's on government speed, but JW-POW, because the traffic's getting more and more congested, and I know there's this dream out there that that'll just move people to other alternatives, but the reality is we have a lot of tourists. And so when we open up JW-POW connection, that will help people from trying to race down the road because they're late, because they're stuck in traffic over on Milton and stuff. So I think this, in the overall big picture, I'm hoping that we are sooner than later on the JW-POW. So
that's great. And if I can take a quick moment to make one last comment that I wasn't able to get to. Distances matter in terms of crossing distances. At Lone Tree and Butler, the one that we all discussed for hours about, that's 5 lanes at 11 feet each, about 55, 56 feet more or less of crossing distance. The smallest distance here is 86 feet. That's a lot, right? And if you can think about a kid going from Canyon Del Rio to Sinawa Middle School, that's 170 feet of crossing distances. Versus at Lone Tree and Butler, it's maybe 110. So this isn't necessarily convenient for pedestrians or children, but I do think staff is making an effort to try to meet the city code while also meeting the needs of our community. But I still have concerns about the distance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shimoni. Dapper Dre.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, staff. Also want to thank the presenters. Was at the presentation at the Aquaplex. Got a lot of good information. Appreciate it. I would like to echo any kind of consideration for reducing of speed limits is, I think, a good thing across the board, especially on our thoroughfares. I know most of the time a lot of the modeling is going for, again, cars, but that's always convenience, and anything to slow down either sightline or by design, which I think, you know, I didn't know how I felt about roundabouts first off for a while, but then seeing what it does to actually have to geometrically and physically slow down cars is an amazing thing. So if we can do that in any other kind of design, I think it's helpful for people who are trying to walk and trying to bike and being ultra considerate of that. I'd also like to point out that most of the people that come and talk about this kind of thing are pedestrians and cyclists. Rarely do you have anybody who's a staunch motorist who is coming in and asking you to raise speed limits and to make it faster for cars. Yes, people are asking for shorter commute times. Understandable. You want to be able to make it to the places you want to go as quickly as possible. But it's not pedestrians and cyclists that are often slowing down these queue lines and stuff. It's vehicles. I mean, it's all the vehicles that we continue to plan for, that we continue to put at the first and foremost design pattern. Is there any chance at some point there's a strictly pedestrian thing that has some car features? And I'm not talking about the FUTs, because that's not something that is maintenance during the winter or maintenance on a regular place. It's always design, 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 huge amount for cars. Okay, let's like consider a little bit for pedestrians, crossings. Let's consider a little bit of what we can give them for the sidewalk and the side travel lanes. Maybe one of these days we can consider like a specifically pedestrian and bike thoroughfare or boulevard or something that has maybe a little bit of a car feature. Because that's how we always feel. And pedestrians and cyclists are always put the burden to traverse and to figure out their commutes and to add time to the commutes. Make that for the convenience of the car. The car is a quality or climate-controlled box that can sit in traffic, that can sit in places and be considerate, and yet it never is taken into consideration in that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Star Kelly Raymer.
So, do I sit here? Oh, right here. Okay. Mayor, Council, thank you very much for your time. And gentlemen, thank you for your time. I also was at the presentation at the Aquaplex, and as a result came to this presentation, because I didn't quite understand all of the charts, because none of the streets are labeled. You just have arrows. I want to know, well, I live in Continental. I've lived there for 15 years. Whenever there has been problems with trucks getting onto I-40, what they tend to do is come out of Little America, make a right, go to Continental Drive or Mount Pleasant, and take those roads to Country Club and get on the freeway there. I want to know what's going to keep trucks. You said they can only make a right-hand turn, but they can. Well, what's going to keep them from then getting to Continental and making a left-hand turn and going and getting to the freeway? Or to Mount Pleasant. These are two residential streets. As it stands now, there are no crosswalks on either one of those. I cannot see how you're going to not have trucks using those roads. So I'd like to see that addressed, because it's not safe for the rest of us.
We'll ask them when we have some additional questions. We'll ask them to address that.
Thank you very much. I, too, am a proponent of safety, and I'm glad to see that you guys are considering safety. One of the things I did also notice, I'm sorry, this is one last comment, when you listed your partners that you're working with, Flagstaff Unified School District wasn't included. And I'm wondering, with all those schools there, why that was the case, since they also take care of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that you apply for one of our city commissions. You think of really good questions. Thank you.
Well, and just let me know, and maybe I will.
Wilma Enninger? Did I come close?
No,
Ugh.
it's Dutch, agendaq. Thank you for being here tonight, and just a second. I live in Sinagua Heights. I appreciate and also attended the hearing and had some tough questions for you guys, but I really appreciate the challenge that they are confronting because of prior bad decisions regarding this road. I do have one comment I want to make real quick. I live in Sinagua Heights, but my property bounds Butler, and I have not been consulted, and I may well be affected. If you look at the map, and I don't know if you can bring that back up, but the map shows the project going to right past my property, and no one has spoken to me. I think that's a problem. And regarding the project, Sinagua Heights is not included. Anyone who drives Butler, coming from Continental, coming from Fox Glen, coming from east or west, knows that traffic bottles up at Sinagua Heights during school periods when parents are dropping their kids off and picking them up. And in the 8 o'clock and rush hour times, we cannot really easily turn left out of Sinagua Heights. In fact, it's dangerous for us to turn. So it seems to me that it makes sense to include Sinagua Heights in the planning on this, particularly as people come out of this proposed roundabout, if that is approved, they're going to go fast up that hill, and there's a curve, and there's a sort of a slingshot effect if you drive that road, and cars just start speeding faster right there. And it seems to me that that curve should be addressed in any plan to look at redesigning Butler. I have other comments. Let's see. So regarding failure to include Sinagua Heights, and there's no crosswalk for us to get across the street. So if I want to walk my dog over at the middle school, I really am taking my life into my hands. There's no easy way to get across that street. And we have a lot of children now, as home ownership is turned over in Sinagua Heights, who go to the middle school, and they're crossing that road, and they're not going to go down to the roundabout or down to the school and then come up the hill. What they're doing is crossing the hill and climbing the hill there. So that really needs to be addressed. I'm really concerned about the roundabout from the perspective of pedestrian traffic. And the reason that so few of us walk on Butler right now is not that we'd rather drive, but that it's dangerous to drive there. And putting in a roundabout that I was trying to calculate how long it would take me to do it and how patient an 8-year-old would be waiting for traffic to go. I figure we're going to have deaths there, and I would much prefer the light fixture. And I know that people say the roundabouts are safer, but there are fewer fatalities, but there are more accidents, and it seems to me that many of those accidents are serious. And may I have a few more minutes to finish, as there are very few people here?
Well, I had a question about when you were talking about Sinagua Heights and how fast people go there. So I guess it's a question for both, and that is, are there future plans for doing some of these treatments up east on Butler to slow traffic down? Yes.
Why not now?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. As part of this project, we have not fully determined what the exact limits will be. We do have some options, whether it would be medians or striping at their intersection. We haven't gotten into design. Certainly we've heard some of these concerns, so we will continue to work and evaluate those.
Thank you. And Wilma, what were your additional concerns about traffic on that street?
The proposal to put the median there in front of Little America, Mobile, and Black Bart's is, I think, going to terribly affect those businesses and also me. So say that I go to Mobile and gas up and I want to go back east on Butler. I can't. So I should go through the intersection, go down to the frontage road, turn right there, go in front of Walmart, up to the 4th Street overpass and back down to Butler? That makes no sense whatsoever. I believe that we're just going to have to suck it in, suck it up, and allow trucks to make right, and residents. Say I want to go to Little America for brunch. I can't make a left turn in there. What am I supposed to do? Cross through the light, make a U-turn in front of the Chevron, and then come back? We're adding all sorts of dangerous driving to what is already a messy situation. But I think if they were a light there and clear guidance for drivers as well, because I'm coming west on Butler and a truck is out there wanting to make a left turn and all the drivers are out there saying, no way, and making the truckers wait to make their turn until they've gone by. Well, we have to have some common sense as citizens as well and have some respect for the business people, truckers who are trying to get back on the road. So and finally, my last comment is, I'm really concerned about, as I said, about the impact of those businesses, long-term businesses here in town. How do we go to Little America? How do we go to Mobile? Black Bart's. Is the Housing Authority aware that one of the proposals would take land from Black Bart's, and that would be the RV spaces that are on the outside for the roundabout? There are 12 of those spaces. They rent for $1,000 a month. So that's a net annual loss to Black Bart's of $144,000. But more important, that is 12 affordable living spots here in Flagstaff. That building up there on the 4th next to the middle school, I call it the monstrosity on the hill, will in 5 to 6 years create how many spaces? 10, 12? But we're going to lose what are really affordable housing spaces for not just low income, but middle income workers. I know someone who was living at Black Bart's for 2 years who got $30 an hour, but couldn't find housing in Flagstaff. So the installation of the medians won't be a mess for those of us who live there, and I think it's a bad idea. It will hurt businesses, and I think that other solutions need to be found. And the roundabout at Harold Ranch Road, as I said, affects the and Harold Ranch Road people were at that hearing too, and they said, hey, we weren't consulted. Wait a minute. And as I said, I live right there. My property is right there in that yellow line. Thank you. Nobody's talked to me. That's a real problem. So I've got these written comments. Can I leave them for you? And then
You can. Thank you.
at your leisure?
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for the extra minutes. I appreciate it.
Okay, let's see. How do we want to... if you will come back, I want to ask you some of the questions that have been asked by our speakers and then take comments and questions from council members as well. What about the business access? And so we talked about the truck traffic coming out of Little America, and I didn't realize that trucks went all the way up to Mount Pleasant or Continental. Was that the other? Yeah, or Continental, and we're using those to get onto I-40. I was just thinking about my own. It's essentially, if you're going to try to turn left out of there, it's kind of like closing your eyes and just punching it. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
I'll start with the business access. At this point, we have been coordinating. We have had conversations with Black Bart's, Mobile, and Little America about this. We didn't go into a ton of detail here, but so far what we're showing here is that we're maintaining lefts in. So you have access into the business from any direction. You the speaker was correct that, in the event if you were at Mobile and you wanted to leave and go east, the current configuration would not allow for a left out. And that's largely the restriction here, right? Because left out is where you have to cross lanes and go merge in. It's the much more difficult and often more dangerous maneuver. It's the one with the trucks that's causing trouble. So in what we have here, we have maintained left ins both into Mobile, Little America, and Black Bart's.
Wait a minute. Oh, okay, so that car, that's a left in.
This is Mobile.
Okay.
Mobile in, this is Little America in. We didn't really focus on this, but there's some adjustments to this truck. We're trying to shrink that truck driveway as much as possible because it's currently well over 200 feet wide. And then, of course, preserving the left into Black Bart's. We have had conversations with Black Bart's about both this maintaining their existing entrance. The original plans were to actually have them take their entrance off of the roundabout. That were the historical plans. They're not in support of that for some of the reasons that were mentioned. It would impact RV spots. So we haven't gotten into design, so we haven't evaluated what those impacts will be. Of course, we commit to doing our best to minimize any of those impacts, to taking any RV spaces and so on. But at this point, we haven't gotten there, so we have not fully evaluated what those impacts would be.
So if you're coming out of Mobile or coming out of Black Bart's, your only choice is a right turn out of both of those.
And Little America, yes.
Oh, okay.
If you're exiting, right turns are your only options.
So then if you wanted to then go east up Butler, you're making a U-turn somewhere.
Right, or you're going down to Ponderosa and going up Huntington, or you're finding another route to loop back around.
And the comment about Black Bart spots, is that part of this project, some of that property?
We haven't gotten into design, so we haven't been able to fully evaluate whether there will be impacts to Black Bart's. We've had the conversations, we hear their concerns, and our intent is to minimize any impacts. There are some grade changes there. There are some historical property issues there as far as what's currently right-of-way and what's not that we still have to work through. But that will largely be informed when we actually get into design, because we have some flexibility as far as where that roundabout goes. And obviously it needs to serve all the users, but we have committed to continue to working with Black Bart's and to minimizing those impacts.
And I promise that I'm going to allow you to answer the first question that I asked you. But what is the reason, I think I can guess, but what's the reason for the first roundabout at Harold Ranch Road?
The first roundabout is for that truck U-turn movement to allow them to get back. The large majority, the example that was given is when there is an issue on I-40 and trucks are trying to find an alternate detour route to cut off a couple of miles and so on. And I can't speak to any solutions about how that might be addressed right now. But the roundabout is largely driven by that need for trucks to be able to perform a safe U-turn maneuver to get back on the interstate, because that's where the vast majority of those trucks are. It's important to note that both Butler and 4th Street are truck routes. They are designated truck routes within the city.
And residents of Harold Ranch Road will be able, of course, with the roundabout there, they'll be able to go left or right. Okay, and then, so you did just answer my first question about trucks, and it sounds like there needs to be some enforcement, because do I understand correctly that Continental and Mount Pleasant are not truck routes?
Butler east of 4th Street is not classified as a truck route.
Okay. Okay. Council members, do you have other questions while I flip through my notes? Council Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the speakers brought up about the school up there on Butler. I have the opportunity to drive Butler past there over to Continental, and I see that issue, and maybe we could kind of incorporate. I know it's been a problem for a while. Maybe we could look at that to see if we're kind of making that improvement up that direction anyway, see the feasibility of maybe putting in a light or something, because there are a lot of kiddos that are hanging out and getting out of school and trying to get home or wherever. I too am concerned about Black Bart's losing, spaces. I know a great alternative for a lot of our residents is having a mobile home or a travel trailer and using that as their home because of the cost of living. So hopefully we can find a way not to take away any of those spots. And then, but to the point of not being able to turn left on Butler, I mean, that's hairy anyway. It might be a blessing to not turn left, because I came out of Little America to turn right to get back into town, and it is one of those close your eyes and punch it thing. And so maybe if we're forced to not have that option, it might save some fender benders or even lives. So I am not opposed to that at all. So I just want to make those 3 points, and I am really concerned about Black Bart's losing any spaces. Maybe they could go further down or whatever, but just keep that in your mind.
Additional comments or questions? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'll weigh in here. Very good discussion. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the great questioning, the comments that have been made already, and the public participation both tonight and previously. I don't have a lot to say. I'm a big fan of Alternative D. I'm also okay with the other roundabout option. I'm glad there's a better option surfacing. I think it's well known at this point that I'm a roundabout guy. I'm your go-to roundabout guy when you need a roundabout guy. I wonder with this underground pedestrian feature tunnel, I understand what's going on there. That whole area is going to get raised to a higher grade level. So putting in a tunnel wouldn't be that difficult and would be a lot less expensive than, say, what we're doing near Target and Milton. I wonder if it would be feasible to even look into crossway there so that you're able to come into and out of all 4 of those intersection spots. Just something to think about and price out maybe. I think if we're going to invest in that tunnel, it might not be that much more of an investment to make sure there's access in all 4 areas. Maybe I'm wrong there because I don't know about some other drainage features or other problems, but let me know what you find out there. And I'll just wrap up by saying I'm really grateful and just very heartened by the shift in this conversation over the 6 years that I've been on council. It's really nice to see that I don't feel like I'm swimming uphill anymore, upstream, talking about right-sizing our roads and getting more features for pedestrians and multimodal efforts and active transportation into our existing system. This is a conversation that has really taken a turn towards pedestrians and cyclists over the last couple of years. I'd like to give Councilmember Shimoni much of the credit for that, just for being so persistent and persuasive. And I'd like to give myself some credit for that too. I think I've been a good stalwart partner in these ideas and concepts. And it's just really nice that there seems to be a lot of synergy in this room, and there seems to be a lot of like-mindedness in terms of what the objective should be, which is to get everybody moving better. And it's just really nice to be up here having this conversation without feeling like I'm putting on armor getting ready for a fight. It's really, really heartening. So thank you to everyone on council for that. And thank you to staff as well. I think you've been very responsive to council's slow but steady sort of shift in how we're thinking about this as a community.
Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you. Have a few thoughts to share. I do like what Mr. Shimoni said about building for now, but also in the future. And I think we are doing that. And again, I appreciate where we've started when I got on council to now. It is a huge difference. I agree with the raised crosswalks, doing the median at 12 feet, making the turn movements, which you already did talk about, sharp to slow people down, the beacons to only have to push once, markings to remind the drivers that they are sharing the road with bicyclists. I now do share the road or share the lane as I go in, which is crazy to say, but I do it. And I think that, you know, while we're having this conversation, we can bring in the crossing issues at Sinagua Middle School and maybe make that kind of an add-on to this project, because I too, my son went there. I've driven past and watched a lot of near misses, and I think it would be a good time to kind of wrap that into this conversation. Thank you.
Well, great comments and conversation, Council. Councilmember Sweet.
I'm so sorry. I do have one more. I think communicating with the businesses like Little America and Black Bart's, if you can really focus in on that, I'm hearing that maybe they're not getting enough communication. And you've done so great with everything, and I think they need to be part of it. So thank you.
Are you finished?
I am officially done.
Okay, thank you. I agree. This is a long way from where we were even when I started on council, and I'm appreciative of it. It does feel more cooperative, and staff, I see that you get that we are very concerned about helping people walk and bike if they want to do that as an alternative to driving, or if that is their only mode of transportation. So what I would say, when you move into design, if you could just think of pedestrians first with every decision and ask, how does this impact pedestrians? Then the design for cyclists will come along with that. And I think, too, we can all envision a future where we have more mixed modes of transportation and it's not so reliant on automobiles. And that is not to say that everyone's going to get out of their car. No one has that expectation. But we can allow traffic to flow, and we can make it enjoyable for pedestrians and cyclists to use those roads in that way as well. Mr. Shimoni mentioned that council has a couple of times asked about lower speed limits along the entire length of Butler, and I really want to see that happen. I want a conversation about what that looks like if we lower the speed limit on Butler. I would like to see a lower speed limit on this portion of the project. I think that it will make a huge difference to cyclists and pedestrians and a minuscule difference to automobiles. So hear that, and please let's have that conversation. I will echo and support everything that the Flagstaff Biking Organization brought up. I think that those are some excellent ideas, so please keep those in mind when you are going to design phase. And let's keep up the communication and make sure that as we're moving into the design phase that the people who we've heard from who felt like they weren't consulted or told, I think that you've done an outstanding job of community outreach. But hearing that there are people who weren't consulted, let's take that into consideration and make sure that we are communicating with those entities. And echo the FUSD, anything that we can do to make that. Butler is just such a long road with so few opportunities to cross that anything we can do to make it convenient and safer for students and teachers and whoever else is trying to access Sanawa is a good thing. Fox Glen, everyone. Do you feel like you have the direction that you need?
I think we do. Obviously, many, many more details that we'll have to dive into and hammer out. And it will be a process, and we'll keep people apprised of that process and continue to engage. We continue to encourage the public or anyone along that corridor to reach out. They have all my contact information at this point, so if there's a specific concern, please reach out to me. Anyone on council, anything that you want to talk about, please keep us in the loop and we'll continue to move forward. I think I'm hearing that Alternative D is pretty strongly supported at this point, so we will proceed with that. I think we got some feedback on some of those sub-bullets. There's some nuance there. I'm sure we'll revisit those when we dive into design. And I think we'll continue evaluating, at least at the feasibility level, what that grade separated crossing would look like. There are a few challenges there. Some of those involve the grades. We need to be able to get people at street level down to those in an accessible manner. They have to be accessible facilities. We can get them there, but they may have to loop down to Butler because coming down 4th Street is steep. So there's some considerations. We'll continue to do the work and we'll be back, like I said, we'll be back at some point around 30% design sometime this winter to continue that contract modification, the CMAR process, and we look forward to that future engagement.
Thank you. And I would say in terms of communication with us, the more the better. Don't be afraid to come to us a lot. We'd like to hear from you and give you input.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving down to item number 13, future agenda item requests. All right, we need 3 members of council to support this future agenda item request by Councilmember Matthews to place on our future agenda a discussion to consider adding the 10-year housing plan to the staff summary policy impact section. You can count me as one of those. Council, do you have questions of Councilmember Matthews, or are you ready to give your thumbs up or down? Okay, so are you supportive? Yes, 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 yes. Great. Thank you, Councilmember Matthews. Okay, we are moving down to the second public participation. We have Camille, is it Lanham? Oh. Okay, and Macias, I think Macias is gone as well. Okay, I will move slowly to item number 15, informational items to from Mayor, Council, and staff and future agenda item requests. Let's start online with Councilmember McCarthy.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I just might note that I will likely be at council in person next week. I'll leave it at that.
We look forward to seeing you. Councilmember Sweet.
I look forward to being.
And Councilmember McCarthy, I'm going to miss you because I will not be here at the meeting next week. So I'm sorry to not see your smile. So thank you.
Councilmember House.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be brief. I apologize for not contributing much towards the end of this meeting. I've been in a great deal of pain today, and it was distracting me a bit. I don't have anything for to from except to share that I will not be in person for next week's meeting. I'm traveling to San Diego for a conference. I'm going to try to be online for as much of that as I can, but I may miss it because of the time change. So I will hopefully see you there virtually.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, guys. I'll be brief, too. I did want to mention I spent the past week in Santa Monica, California with Lori Pappas of our Discover Flagstaff team. She's our film commissioner right now. And we had a wonderful time pitching Flagstaff and promoting Flagstaff as a film destination. I also just wanted to, I failed to do this a couple weeks ago. I wanted to take a moment to mention that I've been invited onto the board of the Flagstaff Community Band, and am now serving in that capacity and really enjoying that group of folks, and really enjoying and have enjoyed for many years the amenity that they provide the community, and I'm looking forward to engaging that way. That's all I'll say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthews?
Thank you, Mayor. I have another fair I'll get to in a minute, but I did want to give a shout out to Emily, and I forgot who came out with her, from Water Services. She runs the conservation program, and I met with her and my staff at a new living. We have 21 living units, and they supplied us with water conserving shower heads and little pills that you drop in the toilet tank to test for leaks, and aerators for the faucets, and they have a little device that measures how much water comes out, how many gallons it is in a 30-second time. Very, very impressive. And then she's looking into meters that will go on our water meters to send us an alert if there is a unusual spike in water. So it was very informative. I was really excited to participate in this water conservation effort because we do go through about 10,000 gallons a month. So it will be, and there's no regulator there for our residents to limit their showers. So this will help us immensely. So I was very appreciative of that. So I just wanted to give her a shout out, and the Water Services team. And then on behalf of course, myself and then my fellow commissioners on the Indigenous Commission, I'm asking to have a fair to officially make the second Mondays in October, which previously was known as Columbus Day, to be an official Indigenous Peoples Day for the city. We've talked about different options and different dates throughout the year, and this one was unanimously agreed upon throughout the commission, and so I'm asking for that to be a fair item to be discussed.
Thank you. I don't really have a lot. I was down at the Flynn Brown convention. They have it annually. I'm a fellow with the Flynn Brown through Arizona Center for Civic Leadership, and the next round of applications, if anyone is interested in becoming a fellow, is in February of next year. It was excellent. I was able to give the Arizona Champion of Northern Arizona award to the mayor of Cottonwood, and it was just nice to see all my fellows. There are 400 and some of us now in Arizona. So that's all I have. Staff, is there anything? All right, we're adjourned.